Hello guys, welcome to Ben 10 What If. So in this video, we will see what if Ben 10 was in the DC universe, Ben 10 vs Darkseid. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, Worlds Collide. Ben Tennyson's day had started like any other, aliens causing trouble, civilians in danger, and him having to save the day. You know, the usual. But as the familiar green light of the Omnitrix faded and he felt his DNA rewriting itself into XLR8's form, he had no idea his universe was about to get a whole lot bigger. "Come on, Omnitrix, don't fail me now," Ben shouted as he sped through Bellwood, chasing down what appeared to be a Tetraman fugitive. The four-armed alien had been tearing through downtown, and Grandpa Max and Gwen were trying to evacuate civilians while Ben handled the muscle. The Tetraman hurled a car directly at a group of screaming pedestrians. Ben pushed XLR8 to his limits, the world blurring around him as he raced ahead of the projectile, creating a cyclone that slowed the vehicle's momentum enough for him to redirect it safely to the ground. "That was way too close," Ben muttered, his reptilian tail lashing behind him. "Hey, four arms. Pick on someone with a watch that can turn into your cousin," the alien fugitive roared, pulling a strange device from his belt. It glowed with an eerie purple energy that made the Omnitrix on Ben's wrist spark and hiss. That's new," Ben said, backing up slightly. "And probably bad." The device pulsed, sending out waves of energy that seemed to target the Omnitrix specifically. The familiar green interface flickered red, then purple, then began cycling through colors Ben had never seen it display before. Definitely bad. Ben tried to slap the Omnitrix symbol on his chest to transform into something else. Maybe Diamond Head could withstand whatever energy was interfering with the watch, but the moment his claw touched the symbol, a blinding flash of light erupted around him. He felt his body being stretched, compressed, and pulled in impossible directions all at once. The sensation was worse than any transformation he'd ever experienced, like being turned inside out while falling through an endless void. "Grandpa! Gwen!" Ben called out, but his voice seemed to echo strangely, as if traveling through water. The world around him dissolved into streaks of color and light, the familiar streets of Bellwood replaced by what looked like a tunnel of swirling energy. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it stopped. Ben crashed face-first onto cold concrete, the impact knocking the wind out of him. The transformation had worn off, leaving him human again, and disoriented. His ears rang, and he tasted blood where he'd bitten his lip during the fall. "Ugh, note to self, interdimensional travel without a seatbelt is not recommended," he groaned, pushing himself to his knees. It took several seconds for his vision to clear, and when it did, Ben froze. This wasn't Bellwood. Towering skyscrapers of glass and steel surrounded him, stretching higher into the sky than any building in his hometown. A golden globe rotated slowly atop the tallest one, emblazoned with a name Ben recognized immediately, the Daily Planet. "No way," Ben whispered, stumbling to his feet. I'm in," his realization was cut short by screams. Not the normal screams of people witnessing a superpowered fight, but genuine terror. Ben spun around to see civilians running in panic as the sky above the city tore open, a boom tube, though Ben didn't know that's what it was called. From the swirling portal emerged flying creatures with insectoid features and armored bodies. "Parademons," Ben said without thinking, recognizing them from the comics he occasionally read. "Which means I'm in." A sonic boom cut through the air as someone, moved faster than Ben's eyes could track, slamming into one of the parademons and sending it crashing into a nearby building. The blur of red and blue resolved into a hovering figure that made Ben's jaw drop. Superman. The actual, real-life Superman. "Civilians, clear the area immediately," the Man of Steel called out, his voice carrying authority that made even Ben want to snap to attention. "Justice League is responding to the threat." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. Its interface had returned to its standard green color, but something felt different. The watch seemed to be pulsing with energy, almost like it was excited. "Okay, Ben, get it together," he muttered to himself. "You're somehow in the DC universe, there are parademons attacking, and," a woman's scream cut through his thoughts. About half a block away, a mother clutched her young daughter as 3 parademons descended toward them, claws extended. Ben didn't hesitate. He twisted the dial on the Omnitrix, cycling through his available transformations until he found what he needed. "Going hero," he shouted, slapping down on the watch. The familiar green light engulfed him as his DNA rewrote itself. His skin hardened into red rocks while magma flowed through the cracks. Heat built inside him until it felt like he might explode, but instead, it became a controlled inferno. "Heat blast!" Ben shouted, flames erupting from his head and hands. He took off running toward the civilians, propelling himself forward on jets of fire from his feet. The parademons turned at his approach, their attention diverted from their intended victims. One screeched a warning to the others, and all 3 turned to face the oncoming threat. "Hey, ugly!" Ben called out, gathering a ball of flame in his palm. "I've dealt with way scarier things than you before breakfast." He hurled the fireball, catching the lead parademon square in the chest. It shrieked, its armor smoking as it fell back. The other 2 charged, apparently deciding that Ben was the more immediate threat. Ben planted his feet and unleashed a stream of flame, creating a wall of fire between the parademons and the civilians. "Run," he shouted to the mother and child. "Get to safety." They didn't need to be told twice. As they fled, Ben turned his full attention to the attacking parademons. One managed to fly through his flame barrier, swinging a crackling energy staff at his head. Ben ducked, the weapon missing him by inches, and responded by grabbing the parademon's ankle. His fiery touch seared through the creature's armor, causing it to howl in pain and drop its weapon. "What's wrong? Can't take the heat?" Ben quipped, hurling the parademon into its companion. Both crashed into a parked car, setting off its alarm. The third parademon, the one Ben had initially struck with a fireball, had recovered and was now diving toward him from above, some kind of energy weapon charging in its hands. "Oh no you don't." Ben thrust both palms upward, releasing a concentrated blast of heat that caught the parademon mid-flight. The creature's weapon overloaded, exploding in its hands and sending it tumbling through the air. Ben was so focused on the fight that he almost missed the red-caped figure hovering nearby, watching him with a mixture of surprise and wariness. Hi," Ben said awkwardly, waving a flaming hand at Superman. "I'm on your side, I promise." Before Superman could respond, a new wave of parademons poured from the boom tube, and the sky filled with energy blasts and battle cries as more members of the Justice League arrived. A green streak that could only be Green Lantern. A red blur that must be the Flash. A dark shadow swinging between buildings that had to be Batman. The battle was spreading across the city, and Ben knew he needed to help. He spotted a group of parademons converging on a school bus trapped in traffic. "Kids in trouble," he said, pointing. "I'm going to help them." Without waiting for Superman's approval, Ben took off on jets of flame, rocketing toward the stranded bus. As he approached, he could see children inside pressing their faces to the windows, looks of terror on their faces as the parademons began tearing at the vehicle's roof. Ben landed on top of the bus with a thud, causing the parademons to look up in surprise. "School's out early today," he announced, cracking his knuckles with a sound like stones grinding together. "And you guys are about to get detention." He unleashed a Nova Blast, the wave of heat driving the parademons back. 2 retreated entirely, but 3 held their ground, producing shields that seemed to absorb the thermal energy. "Adaptive tech, huh?" Ben muttered. "Let's try something else." He slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Green light flashed, and where Heat Blast had stood, a new creature appeared, a massive, dinosaur-like alien with tough red skin and enormous strength. Humongosaur. Ben roared, now towering over the bus. He grabbed the nearest parademon and simply crushed its shield with his bare hands. Let's see you adapt to this. He hurled the creature into the distance, then turned to face the remaining two. They fired energy weapons at him, the blast stinging but not penetrating his thick hide. Ben grew even larger, reaching nearly 30 feet tall, and slammed his fists down onto the street, creating a shockwave that sent the parademons flying. With the immediate threat neutralized, Ben shrank back down to a more manageable 15 feet and carefully peeled back the damaged roof of the bus. "Everyone okay in there?" he asked, his deep voice gentler now. The bus driver, a middle-aged woman who looked more annoyed than frightened, nodded. "We're fine, just shaken." What are you?" Before Ben could answer, a new voice cut in, female, authoritative. "Step away from the civilians." Ben turned to see Wonder Woman hovering nearby, her lasso glowing at her hip, her expression stern and ready for battle. "Whoa," Ben said, raising his hands. "I'm helping, I swear. Just save these kids from those parademon things." Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed, but before she could respond, Superman descended next to her. "He's telling the truth, Diana," Superman said. "I saw him protect civilians earlier. He's not with Darkseid's forces." "Darkseid," Ben repeated, the name sending a chill through him despite Humongosaur's normally unflappable nature. "So that's who's behind this." Wonder Woman studied him. "You know of Darkseid, yet you're not from around here. I've never seen a creature like you before." "It's complicated," Ben said, tapping the Omnitrix symbol again. Another flash of green light, and Ben returned to his human form, a teenage boy in jeans, a black t-shirt, and his signature green jacket, the Omnitrix prominent on his wrist. Both Justice League members visibly tensed at the transformation, Wonder Woman's hand moving to her sword. "My name is Ben Tennyson," he explained quickly. I think I'm from another universe. This watch lets me transform into different aliens. I was fighting a criminal back in my world when something weird happened, and I ended up here. In your world. During what looks like an invasion. Another universe, Superman repeated, exchanging a glance with Wonder Woman. It wouldn't be the first time. A crackling voice came through what Ben assumed was some kind of communicator. "Superman, Wonder Woman, we need backup near the financial district. Batman is pinned down with civilians in the First Metropolitan Bank." "On our way," Superman responded, then looked at Ben. "You say you want to help?" "That's what I do," Ben said with a confident nod. "Back home, I'm a hero too." Wonder Woman still looked skeptical, but nodded. "We could use the assistance. But stay close, if you make one move that suggests you're not what you claim to be." "Yeah, I get it," Ben said. Lasso of truth, heat vision, not a great combo to be on the wrong side of. "But seriously, I'm one of the good guys." Superman actually smiled slightly. "Then prove it. Can any of your transformations fly?" Ben grinned back, already turning the Omnitrix dial. "Watch this." He slammed down on the watch, and in a flash of green, his body morphed into a red, mantle-like alien with wings extending from his arms. "Jet Ray," he announced, his voice now higher and slightly nasal. "Race you there." Ben took off, streaking through the sky faster than most jets could fly. Superman and Wonder Woman followed, clearly surprised by his speed. The battle for Metropolis was just beginning, and Ben Tennyson was right in the middle of it. The financial district was chaos. Parademons swarmed around the First Metropolitan Bank, their weapons blasting chunks from the ornate marble facade. Inside, Batman was using his grapnel gun to swing between pillars, drawing fire away from a group of terrified bank customers and employees huddled behind the teller counters. "Stay down," the Dark Knight commanded, hurling batarangs that exploded on impact with the nearest parademons. The creatures fell back momentarily but quickly regrouped, their numbers seemingly endless. Ben, still in Jet Ray form, arrived first, diving through a shattered window and immediately firing neuroshock beams from his eyes and tail. The energy blasts caught several parademons by surprise, sending them crashing into walls and columns. Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl as he landed on a balcony overlooking the bank floor. "Superman, who or what is that?" he demanded over his comm link. "Apparently, he's on our side," came Superman's reply as he and Wonder Woman burst through the bank's front doors. "Name's Ben Tennyson. Claims to be from another universe." "Great," Batman muttered. "Just what we needed. Another interdimensional crisis." Ben swooped down, landing near the Dark Knight. "Hey, you're Batman. I've read about you, well, not you exactly, but the you from the comics in my world. You're way more intimidating in person." Batman just stared at him for a beat. "Focus. Civilians need extraction. Can you provide cover fire while Superman and Wonder Woman clear a path?" "On it," Ben said, taking to the air again. "But I think I need something with more firepower for this many parademons." He tapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest and transformed in midair. His body expanded and hardened into living crystal, faceted and gleaming green. "Diamond Head," Ben announced as he landed with a heavy thud that cracked the marble floor. He raised his arms, which morphed into crystalline blades, and charged into a group of parademons. Energy weapons fired at him from all directions, but the blasts either reflected off his diamond body or were absorbed entirely. Ben responded by launching crystal shards from his hands, impaling parademons to walls or encasing them in crystal prisons. "Batman, now!" Superman called, having cleared the bank's entrance. "Get the civilians out." Batman didn't hesitate. With practiced efficiency, he directed the trapped bank customers toward the exit. "Move quickly, stay low." A massive parade mon, nearly twice the size of the others, crashed through the ceiling, landing directly in the civilians' path. It roared, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and raised what looked like a modified cannon. Ben reacted instantly. He leaped between the monster and the civilians, his body morphing to create a crystal wall that absorbed the cannon blast. The impact was massive, cracking Ben's protective barrier and sending painful fissures through his form. "Okay, that hurt," he grunted, struggling to maintain the shield. "But I'm not giving up." Wonder Woman's lasso snared the large parademon's weapon, yanking it from its grasp. Superman followed up with a blur of super-speed punches that drove the creature back through the hole it had created in the ceiling. With the path clear again, Batman resumed the evacuation while Ben, Wonder Woman, and Superman formed a defensive perimeter. "So, does this happen a lot around here?" Ben asked, firing another barrage of crystal shards at the encroaching parademons. "Invasions from Apokolips, I mean. More often than we'd like," Wonder Woman replied, deflecting energy blasts with her bracelets. "Darkseid is persistent in his quest to conquer Earth. These aren't standard parademons," Batman called out, rejoining them after the last civilian was safely away. "They have upgraded tech. Something's different about this attack." Ben transformed the crystal formations on his back into spikes, then launched them in all directions, clearing the immediate area of parademons. "In my world, Darkseid is just a character in comics and movies. This is a lot more intense than reading about him. If you want to go home, you picked a bad day to visit," Batman said dryly. A new boom tube opened directly above them, larger than the others. From it descended a figure that made even Ben, with all his experience fighting aliens and monsters, take an involuntary step back. Darkseid. Even from a distance, his presence was overwhelming, a massive figure carved from what looked like living stone, eyes glowing with terrible red energy, his face set in an expression of contemptuous determination. "Kal-El," Darkseid's voice rumbled across the ruined bank like distant thunder. "Once again you stand in my way. It grows tiresome." "Then maybe you should stop invading Earth," Superman shot back, floating up to place himself between Darkseid and the others. Darkseid's gaze shifted, moving past Superman to fix on Ben. "And what is this? A new metahuman?" "No," something different. His eyes narrowed. Something not of this universe. Ben felt a chill run through his crystalline body. How does he know that? Darkseid perceives much, Wonder Woman said quietly. Be wary. The energy signature you emit, Darkseid continued, still staring at Ben. It is unique. Unlike anything in my extensive knowledge of the multiverse. A curious device you wear. Ben instinctively covered the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Sorry, but it's not for sale, rent, or evil universal domination. Darkseid's expression didn't change, but somehow his interest seemed to intensify. Bring me that device, he commanded the surrounding parademons. Kill the rest. The attack came from all sides at once. Parademons swarmed in overwhelming numbers, forcing the heroes to fight back to back. Batman's utility belt seemed to have an endless supply of gadgets, each perfectly suited to disable parademons. Wonder Woman's sword sliced through armor with godlike strength behind each blow. Superman's heat vision cut swaths through the attackers while his super breath sent whole squadrons tumbling. But there were too many, and they were all focused on one target, Ben. They really want this watch. Ben called out, struggling to fend off parademons that were now specifically targeting the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. One managed to land a powerful blow directly on the symbol, sending a shock of pain through Ben's entire body. Dude, watch it. That's connected to my DNA. Ben protested, encasing the offending parademon in crystal. The blow had destabilized the Omnitrix, however. The familiar beeping that signaled a timeout began, and Ben knew he only had seconds before he reverted to human form, making him much more vulnerable. Guys, I've got a problem, he called out to the Justice League members. This form's about to. The green flash came before he could finish, leaving teenage Ben Tennyson standing in the middle of a horde of parademons, the Omnitrix on his wrist flashing red to indicate recharge mode. Time out, he finished weakly, ducking as a parademon swung at his head. Really bad timing. Batman grappled over, dropping smoke pellets that provided momentary cover. Fall back to the vault, he ordered, gesturing toward the massive bank vault door that stood ajar. Defensible position until your device recharges. Ben didn't argue, sprinting toward the vault while Batman covered him. Superman and Wonder Woman continued to engage the main force, but Darkseid himself had begun to descend, his interest clearly piqued by Ben's transformation. That device changes your genetic structure temporarily, Darkseid observed, his voice carrying easily across the battlefield. Such technology would be useful. Yeah, well, get in line, Ben called back, diving into the vault with Batman right behind him. Plenty of bad guys have tried to take the Omnitrix before. None of them succeeded. Batman sealed the vault door, buying them precious minutes. How long until your watch works again? Ben checked the Omnitrix, still flashing red. Usually just a few minutes, but after that interference from the dimensional jump, it's hard to say. Could be longer. Batman nodded, already assessing their situation with the cool calculation he was famous for. Superman and Wonder Woman can handle themselves. Flash and the others are dealing with parademons across the city. What we need is information. His penetrating gaze fixed on Ben. Starting with exactly what that device is and why Darkseid wants it. Ben sighed, holding up his wrist to show the Omnitrix more clearly. It's called the Omnitrix. Created by a genius alien named Azimuth as a way to promote peace and understanding between different species. It contains the DNA of thousands of alien life forms, allowing me to transform into any of them. Batman's expression remained unreadable. And in your world, you use this for helping people. Saving the world. The usual hero stuff, Ben said with a shrug. Been doing it since I was 10, actually. Kind of a family business, my grandpa was a plumber. A plumber, Batman repeated flatly. Ben laughed. Not that kind of plumber. It's what we call our intergalactic police force. Long story. A tremendous impact shook the vault, dust raining down from the ceiling. The vault door, designed to withstand conventional explosives and cutting tools, buckled slightly under what had to be Darkseid's own strength. "That door won't hold him for long," Batman said. "We need a plan." The Omnitrix chose that moment to beep and flash green, indicating it was ready again. Ben grinned. "Now we've got options. Time to introduce Darkseid to one of my heaviest hitters." He twisted the dial, cycling through alien forms until he found what he wanted. "Going hero," he shouted, slapping down on the watch. Green energy engulfed him, and when it faded, Ben had transformed into a towering, white and red alien with tremendous muscles and 4 arms. "4 arms," he announced. "Let's see how Darkseid likes Tetraman strength." Batman stepped back, assessing the new transformation. "Impressive, but Darkseid is in a class by himself. His Omega beams can disintegrate matter. Don't underestimate him." "Trust me, I'm taking this seriously," Ben said, cracking his knuckles, all 16 of them. "But I've faced planet destroyers before. The key is not letting them see you sweat." Another impact hit the vault door, this one leaving a visible dent in the metal. A third blow punched completely through, creating a hole through which glowing red eyes could be seen. "Stand behind me," Ben said, stepping forward and bracing himself. "I can take the first hit." The vault door was ripped away entirely, revealing Darkseid standing there, parademons hovering behind him like demonic courtiers. His gaze fixed on Ben's transformed state, something like scientific curiosity crossing his stony features. "Fascinating," Darkseid rumbled. "Multiple genetic templates, instantly accessible. Such technology would greatly enhance my parademons." "Not happening, rock face," Ben replied, launching himself forward with all 4 arms extended in a massive punch. The impact when he connected with Darkseid was like hitting a mountain. Ben felt pain shoot through his arms, but he didn't relent, following up with a barrage of blows that would have pulverized concrete. Darkseid barely moved. "Is that the extent of your power?" Darkseid asked, sounding almost disappointed. His hand shot out, grabbing one of Ben's wrists in a grip that felt like it might crush bone. "Perhaps this device is not as valuable as I thought. I've got plenty more where that came from." Ben grunted, struggling against Darkseid's grip. He reached for the Omnitrix symbol on his chest with his free hand. Darkseid's eyes glowed brighter. No more transformations. Twin beams of destructive energy, the infamous Omega beams, shot from Darkseid's eyes directly at the Omnitrix symbol. Ben twisted at the last possible second, taking the beams on his shoulder instead. The pain was excruciating, like being burned from the inside out. Batman seized the moment, throwing a series of specialized batarangs that exploded against Darkseid's face and chest. The assault didn't harm the new god, but it distracted him long enough for Ben to break free and tap the Omnitrix symbol. "Big chill," Ben announced as his body transformed into a moth-like alien with blue skin and large wings. "Let's cool you down a bit." He turned intangible just as Darkseid tried to grab him again, the new god's massive hand passing harmlessly through Ben's ghostly form. Ben responded by exhaling a blast of freezing breath directly into Darkseid's face, coating it with a thick layer of ice. The ice lasted only seconds before Darkseid's Omega beams melted it away, but it bought enough time for Superman to crash through the ceiling, delivering a punch that actually made Darkseid stagger back. "Batman, Wonder Woman has cleared an exit path," Superman said, engaging Darkseid in close combat. "Get him out of here." Batman nodded, turning to Ben. "Can you get us out quickly?" "Hold on," Ben said, swooping down to grab Batman under the arms. He turned both of them intangible and flew up through the ceiling, passing through solid matter as if it weren't there. They emerged onto the roof of the bank, where Wonder Woman was indeed clearing the sky of parademons with methodical efficiency, her sword flashing in the sunlight. "The League is regrouping at the Watchtower," she called to them. "Green Lantern will open a portal for evacuation once the civilians are safe." The Watchtower, Ben repeated, his voice carrying a note of excitement despite the dire situation. Your space headquarters, right? I've read about it, well, the comic book version, anyway. Focus, kid, Batman said, though there was perhaps the slightest hint of amusement in his voice. We're still in the middle of an invasion. As if to emphasize his point, the bank building shook violently as Superman and Darkseid continued their battle below. Cracks spread across the roof beneath their feet. Maybe we should move, Ben suggested, still hovering in big chill form. Before they could, the roof exploded upward. Superman came hurtling through the debris, clearly having been on the receiving end of a devastating blow. Wonder Woman immediately flew to intercept him, catching her falling comrade before he could crash into a neighboring building. Darkseid rose through the hole, his expression one of grim determination. Your resistance is pointless. I will have that device. Ben felt a chill that had nothing to do with his current alien form. Darkseid was unlike any enemy he'd faced before, not just powerful, but radiating a sense of inevitable doom, as if his victory was merely a matter of time. You know what? I think it's time for a strategic retreat, Ben said, turning to Batman. I assume the Justice League has a plan B for when Darkseid shows up. Several, Batman confirmed. But first we need to get to the extraction point. A flash of green caught their attention, not Ben's Omnitrix, but a Green Lantern construct forming a mile or so away, creating a visible signal. There's our ride, Batman said. Can you get us there? Ben nodded, but before he could take flight again, Darkseid's Omega beams lanced out, this time striking the Omnitrix symbol dead center. Ben screamed as the device sparked and malfunctioned, green energy crackling around him in erratic pulses. System error. Interference detected, the Omnitrix announced in Asmatha's voice, surprising Ben, it rarely spoke aloud. Emergency randomization activated. That doesn't sound good, Ben managed to say just before the Omnitrix forced another transformation. This time, the green flash was brighter and lasted longer. When it cleared, Ben had transformed into a small, amphibian-like alien with large, bulging green eyes. Gray matter. Seriously? Ben squeaked in a high-pitched voice. Now I'm 6 inches tall. How is this helpful? Darkseid actually looked surprised, perhaps the first genuine emotion he'd shown. The device chooses for you. Interesting. He reached for Ben, his massive hand easily able to crush the tiny alien. Batman reacted quickly, scooping Ben up and firing his grapnel gun in one smooth motion. They swung away from the collapsing bank just as Superman re-engaged Darkseid, buying them precious seconds to escape. The Omnitrix is malfunctioning, Ben explained as they landed on an adjacent rooftop. Darkseid's Omega beams must have scrambled its systems. It's stuck in random selection mode. Can you fix it? Batman asked, already moving toward the extraction point, Ben held carefully in his gloved hand. Actually, as gray matter, probably yes, Ben realized. This form has superintelligence. I just need a minute to. The Omnitrix symbol on his back beeped and flashed, interrupting him. Warning, system reset in progress. Transformation sequence unstable. Another flash of green light, and Ben transformed again, this time into a jellyfish-like alien with electrical powers. Amphibian. Ben announced. Okay, not what I was going for, but at least I can fly again. He hovered up from Batman's palm. Let's move. They made their way across the metropolis skyline, Batman using his grapnel gun with precision while Ben floated alongside him. Below, the battle continued to rage, Justice League members engaging parademons throughout the city. The Flash was visible as a red streak, clearing civilians from danger zones. Green Lantern maintained a massive shield over what appeared to be a hospital. Your team is amazing, Ben said as they paused on a water tower. In my world, I've teamed up with other heroes occasionally, but nothing this organized. The League has protocols for invasions, Batman replied. We've learned from experience. The Omnitrix beeped again, and Ben braced himself for another random transformation. This time he morphed into a sleek, velociraptor-like alien. XLR-8. Now we're talking speed. Ben's visor snapped down over his face. I can get us there in seconds. He scooped up Batman, who didn't look entirely comfortable being carried, and took off at incredible speed, the world blurring around them. Within moments, they reached the extraction point, where Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Ben noted with excitement, was maintaining a swirling green portal while fending off parademons with construct weapons. Batman, Green Lantern acknowledged as they arrived. And, who or what is your friend? Long story, Batman replied. He's with us. The watch he's wearing is what Darkseid is after. Green Lantern nodded. Superman and Wonder Woman are providing rear guard. Everyone else is already through to the Watchtower. You're next. Ben looked back at the battle-torn city. I can stay and help fight. Negative, Batman said firmly. If Darkseid wants your device that badly, our priority is keeping it away from him. We retreat, regroup, and plan our counterattack. Ben wanted to argue but recognized the strategic sense in Batman's words. All right. But as soon as the Omnitrix stabilizes, I'm coming back to help. Noted, Batman said, stepping toward the portal. Now move. They passed through the swirling green energy, Ben experiencing a momentary sensation of weightlessness before emerging into a vast, high-tech chamber that could only be the Justice League Watchtower. The space station's viewing windows revealed Earth below, beautiful and blue, with Metropolis just visible on the North American continent. Whoa, Ben breathed, his XLR-8 form's eyes widening behind his visor. This is beyond cool. All around them, Justice League members were in motion, some receiving medical attention, others huddled around tactical displays. Ben recognized many of them from comics: Aquaman, looking grim as water was applied to what appeared to be burn wounds; Cyborg, directly interfacing with the Watchtower systems; Martian Manhunter, his expression unreadable as he gazed toward Earth. The portal flared again, admitting Superman and Wonder Woman, both looking battle-worn but undefeated. Green Lantern followed, sealing the portal behind him. Darkseid has withdrawn temporarily, Superman reported. The parademons are still attacking, but the military has arrived with anti-apocalypse weaponry from our last encounter. He'll be back, Wonder Woman said, her gaze finding Ben. He wants the device. The Omnitrix chose that moment to time out again, returning Ben to human form in a flash of green light. Several League members who hadn't seen him before tensed, hands moving to weapons. It's okay, Superman said, raising a hand. He's a friend. From another universe, apparently. Another one? The Flash sipped over, circling Ben at super speed before stopping. Didn't we just deal with the crime syndicate last month? Multiversal visitors are getting to be a habit. I'm not here to cause trouble, Ben assured them. Just got transported here by accident during a fight. The alien I was battling had some kind of dimensional device that reacted with my Omnitrix. He held up his wrist. That's this watch thing, if you're wondering. It lets me transform into different aliens. Fascinating, Martian Manhunter said, approaching slowly. Your mind, it contains memories of our world, yet not our world. Ben nodded. In my universe, you guys are characters in comics and movies. Pretty famous ones, actually. Been reading about you since I was a kid. He couldn't help grinning. Meeting you in person is kind of blowing my mind right now. The feeling is mutual, Cyborg said, scanning Ben with one glowing eye. That tech on your wrist is like nothing I've ever seen. The energy signature is off the charts, and the compression algorithms for the DNA storage alone would require computing power beyond anything we have. Azimuth, the guy who created it, is pretty much the smartest being in my universe, Ben explained. Though right now it's not working right. Darkseid's Omega beams messed with its systems. Batman, who had been conferring quietly with Superman, rejoined the conversation. Which brings us to our immediate problem. Darkseid never retreats without a reason. If he's pulling back, it's to regroup and return with a more focused attack. Targeted at Ben and his device, Wonder Woman concluded. Ben looked around at the assembled heroes, literal legends in his world, and felt a strange mixture of excitement and dread. So, what's the plan? Because I'm open to suggestions. Normally I'd just dial up way big and stomp on the bad guys, but with the Omnitrix malfunctioning. Way big? Flash repeated. TOTO fusion transformation. About 200 feet tall, can shoot cosmic rays, Ben explained. Really useful for the bigger threats. The Justice League exchanged glances that Ben couldn't quite interpret. First, Batman said, taking charge, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Cyborg, see if you can interface with Ben's device once it's stabilized. We need to know its capabilities and limitations. On it, Cyborg nodded. Martian Manhunter, reach out to Mr. Miracle. If anyone knows Darkseid's interest in genetic manipulation technology, it would be someone from New Genesis. I will attempt contact immediately, the Martian confirmed, moving toward a communication station. The rest of you, status reports on the Metropolis situation and prepare for Darkseid's return, Batman continued. He won't stay away for long. Superman turned to Ben with a reassuring smile. Don't worry. You're not alone in this. The Justice League protects its own. Even multiversal visitors with weird watches, Flash added with a grin. Ben couldn't help but smile back. Despite the danger, despite being trapped in a universe not his own, there was something undeniably awesome about standing shoulder to shoulder with the Justice League. So, he said, looking around the Watchtower with undisguised amazement, while we're waiting for the Omnitrix to stabilize, does the Justice League cafeteria serve smoothies? 2 hours later, Ben sat in what the League called their tactical planning room, a circular chamber with a holographic display in the center currently showing real-time footage of continuing battles in Metropolis. The Omnitrix had stopped randomly cycling through transformations but remained in recharge mode, the interface stubbornly read. Cyborg stood nearby, various cables and scanning devices aimed at the watch. The technology is incredible, he said, shaking his head in amazement. I can detect the energy patterns, but the coding language is unlike anything in our databases. Azimuth designed it to be pretty much unhackable, Ben explained. Even I don't understand most of how it works, and I've had it for years. Yet Darkseid's Omega effect was able to disrupt it, Batman observed from where he stood reviewing battle footage. That suggests a vulnerability. Ben frowned, suddenly worried. You don't think he could, corrupt the Omnitrix, do you? Because that would be really bad. Universe-ending bad if he accessed Master Control. Master Control? Superman asked, entering the room with Wonder Woman. Full access to all alien forms with no time limit, Ben explained. I've only had it activated a couple times. It's intense. Imagine having the power of 10,000 different alien species at your fingertips, instantly available. The implications weren't lost on the Justice League members. Such power in Darkseid's hands would be catastrophic. Martian Manhunter made contact with Mr. Miracle, Wonder Woman reported. He's on his way. But his initial assessment is troubling. He believes Darkseid may be seeking the Omnitrix to enhance his anti-life equation research. Anti-life equation? Ben repeated. That sounds, not good. It's a mathematical formula that proves life is meaningless, Superman explained grimly. In Darkseid's hands, it could remove free will from every sentient being in existence. And if he could somehow combine that with the Omnitrix's ability to rewrite genetic code. Cyborg trailed off, the implications too disturbing to articulate fully. Ben looked down at the device on his wrist with new concern. So basically, we really need to keep this away from him. Precisely, Batman confirmed. Which is why you'll be staying on the Watchtower when we return to Earth. Wait, what? Ben protested, standing up. "No way. I'm not sitting this out while you guys fight." "It's not a question of your abilities," Superman said gently. "But you're what Darkseid wants. Keeping you here is strategically sound." Ben shook his head firmly. "With all due respect, I've been fighting my own battles since I was 10. The Omnitrix is my responsibility. Besides," he gestured to the still red interface, "it's going to recharge eventually. And when it does, I've got transformations that could really help down there." Wonder Woman studied him with calculating eyes. "The boy has warrior's spirit. On Themyscira, we do not shelter those who can fight." Batman's expression remained unreadable, but after a moment, he gave a slight nod. "You've proven yourself capable in battle. But you follow League protocols and orders without question." "Understood." "Crystal clear," Ben agreed quickly. "So what's the plan?" Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the Watchtower. The holographic display in the center of the room changed, showing a massive boom tube opening directly above Metropolis. "Darkseid's returned," Superman said grimly. "Earlier than expected." But something was different this time. Instead of parademons pouring out, a single massive ship emerged from the interdimensional portal, a vessel bristling with weapons and radiating malevolent power. "War cruiser," Cyborg identified. "Apokolipsian flagship class. Darkseid himself commands from that vessel." Ben watched as the ship positioned itself directly over Metropolis, smaller boom tubes opening around it to deploy fresh waves of parademons. "He's really going all in, isn't he?" "Darkseid never does anything halfway," Wonder Woman said, already moving toward the door. "We must respond in force." The Omnitrix chose that moment to beep and flash green, indicating it was fully recharged. Ben felt a surge of relief. Perfect timing. "I'm ready to," his words were cut short as the Watchtower suddenly rocked violently, throwing everyone off balance. Emergency lights flashed, and Cyborg systems immediately interfaced with the station's computers. "We've been targeted," he reported. "The war cruiser just fired on the Watchtower." "How?" Superman demanded. "Our cloaking systems should hide us from their sensors." Batman was already at a console, fingers flying over the controls. "They're not targeting the Watchtower," he realized, looking up at Ben. "They're targeting the Omnitrix. Somehow they can track its energy signature." Ben felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "So I just led them straight to your headquarters." "Great. Not your fault," Superman assured him. "But we need to move. Now." Another impact rocked the station, more violently this time. Warning klaxons blared as automated systems reported hull breaches and system failures. Apokolipsian boarding parties detected in sectors 3, 5, and 7, the station's computer announced. Security protocols engaged. "They're coming for Ben," Batman said, drawing a batarang. "We move to the emergency teleporters. Flash, clear the path. Cyborg, reroute power to maintain the shields as long as possible." "On it," Flash confirmed, disappearing in a streak of red. "Where are we going?" Ben asked, already activating the Omnitrix and cycling through available aliens. "Away from civilian populations," Batman replied. "If Darkseid wants you badly enough to attack the Watchtower directly, we need a battlefield on our terms." Ben nodded, settling on a transformation. "Then let's give him something to chase. Going hero." He slapped down on the Omnitrix, green energy washing over him as he transformed into a black and blue velociraptor-like alien. "XLR-8, he announced. "I'll scout ahead." Before anyone could stop him, Ben raced out of the room at incredible speed, heading toward where the sounds of battle were loudest. He found Flash engaging a squad of parademons near what appeared to be the main entrance to the docking bay. "Little help here," Flash called out, dodging energy blasts while trying to disable the invaders. Ben grinned behind his visor. "Coming right up." He accelerated to his maximum speed, creating a blue blur as he circled the parademons so quickly that he generated a cyclone, lifting them off their feet and smashing them into each other and the walls. Nice move, Flash approved. But more are coming. Lots more. As if on cue, the docking bay doors buckled under some massive impact. Metal shrieked and groaned as something forced its way through. "We need to fall back," Ben said. "The others are heading for the emergency teleporters." "Good call," Flash agreed. "Race you there?" Ben laughed despite the dire situation. "You're on." They took off together, two streaks, one red, one blue, racing through the Watchtower corridors. Ben knew intellectually that Flash was actually holding back to stay with him, but it was still a thrill to speed alongside one of his childhood heroes. They reached the teleporter room just ahead of the others, finding it already partially damaged from the attack. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and several of the teleporter pads were clearly non-functional. "Not good," Flash muttered, examining the controls. "Systems operating at maybe 30% capacity. We can't all go at once." Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman arrived moments later, with Cyborg bringing up the rear, his arm transformed into a cannon that he fired periodically down the corridor at pursuing forces. "Status?" Batman demanded. "Teleporters damaged," Flash reported. "We'll have to go in smaller groups." A tremendous crash echoed down the corridor, followed by a sound that sent chills down Ben's spine, heavy, measured footsteps approaching with inexorable purpose. "Darkseid," Superman confirmed, his expression grim. "He's come personally." "Then I'll give him what he wants," Ben decided, stepping onto one of the teleporter pads. "Send me down first." "He'll follow." "Absolutely not," Superman began, but Ben cut him off. "Look, I've been doing this hero thing a while too. Trust me. Send me somewhere isolated, and I'll keep him busy until you guys can regroup. The Omnitrix is fully charged now, I've got options." Batman studied him for a moment, then nodded sharply. "The Nevada desert. Coordinates already programmed. It's where we've engaged Darkseid before, minimal civilian risk." "Perfect," Ben said, bracing himself on the pad. "See you there." Flash activated the teleporter, and Ben felt the familiar tingling sensation of his molecules being disassembled. The last thing he saw before the Watchtower disappeared around him was Darkseid himself rounding the corner, his terrible eyes fixing directly on the Omnitrix. Then Ben was standing in harsh sunlight, surrounded by desert on all sides. Miles of empty sand and rock stretched to the horizon, with no sign of human habitation. "Okay, Ben," he muttered to himself, returning to human form to preserve the Omnitrix's charge. "Just you against an evil god from another dimension. No pressure." He didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, a massive boom tube tore open the sky above him, and Darkseid descended slowly, his very presence seeming to darken the sun. The bearer of the device, Darkseid intoned, touching down on the desert floor with surprising grace for a being of his size. "You have led me on quite a chase." "Yeah, well, I'm not big on handing over universe-altering technology to psychotic space dictators," Ben replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Call me picky that way." Darkseid's expression didn't change, but something almost like amusement flickered in those terrible red eyes. "Your bravado is misplaced, child. I am not some common villain from your world. I am Darkseid. I am entropy personified. I am inevitable." "I've heard this speech before," Ben shot back. "Different universe, same megalomaniac playbook." He activated the Omnitrix, the holographic interface popping up to display his available transformations. "Let me show you what this device can really do." He slammed down on the Omnitrix, transforming in a flash of green light into a massive, crystalline alien with a body that appeared to be made of solid diamond. "Diamond Head," Ben announced, his body glinting in the desert sun. "Let's see how your Omega beams handle this." Darkseid didn't hesitate. His eyes flared with crimson energy, and twin beams of destructive force lanced toward Ben. Instead of dodging, Ben crossed his arms before him, the crystalline surface of his body refracting and redirecting the energy in countless harmless directions. "That the best you got?" Ben taunted, morphing his hands into crystalline blades. "My turn." He charged, crossing the distance between them with surprising speed for his size and mass. His bladed arm swung in a powerful arc aimed at Darkseid's chest, only to be caught effortlessly in the new god's massive gray hand. "Interesting," Darkseid commented, examining Ben's crystalline form while holding him immobile despite Ben's struggles. "Your transformations are more than mere shape-shifting. Complete molecular reorganization. Most impressive." "Let go," Ben demanded, his free hand reforming into a mace that he swung at Darkseid's head. The blow connected with a sound like a thunderclap, actually causing Darkseid to turn his head slightly from the impact. But the new god seemed more intrigued than injured, maintaining his grip on Ben's arm. "Your determination is admirable," Darkseid said. "But futile." He tightened his grip, and Ben felt his crystalline form beginning to crack under the immense pressure. Pain shot through his arm as fractures spread across the diamond-like surface. In desperation, Ben slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest with his free hand. Green light flashed, and his form changed again, this time into a green, plant-like alien with a flame-patterned head. "Swamp fire." Ben called out, his newly malleable body easily pulling free from Darkseid's grip. Without hesitation, he thrust both palms forward, unleashing a massive stream of fire directly into Darkseid's face. The flames engulfed the new god completely, turning the surrounding sand to glass from the intensity of the heat. Ben maintained the blast for several seconds, pouring everything he had into it. When he finally let the flames die down, Darkseid stood exactly where he had been, completely unharmed, not even his clothing singed by the inferno. "Fire?" Darkseid asked, actually sounding disappointed. "I was forged in the fires of Apokolips, child. Heat is nothing to me." Ben didn't waste breath on a reply. Instead, he slammed his hands into the ground, causing massive vines to erupt from the desert floor. The plants wrapped around Darkseid's legs and torso, their growth accelerated by Ben's powers, until the new god was completely encased in a cocoon of writhing vegetation. For a moment, there was stillness. Then the entire mass of plants simply disintegrated into dust as Darkseid's omega beams cut through them from within. "Okay, new plan," Ben muttered, tapping the Omnitrix symbol again. This time he transformed into a red, four-armed alien with tremendous strength. "For arms," he shouted, immediately charging at Darkseid. He unleashed a flurry of punches, each blow carrying enough force to shatter mountains. Darkseid blocked some, allowed others to land, but showed no sign of significant damage. The new god responded with a single punch of his own that sent Ben flying backward, creating a trench in the desert floor as he skidded to a halt nearly 100 yards away. "Ow," Ben groaned, pushing himself up from the impact crater. "That definitely hurt." Darkseid approached slowly, his pace unhurried, confident. "Your device contains many forms, yet none approach my power. Why continue this pointless resistance?" "Because that's what heroes do," Ben replied, standing tall despite the pain. "We don't give up, even against impossible odds." Something changed in Darkseid's expression, a subtle shift that might have been respect. "Then show me your full potential, hero of another universe. Show me your strongest form." Ben hesitated, then nodded grimly. "You asked for it." He hit the Omnitrix symbol once more, and this time the transformation was more dramatic. Ben's body grew exponentially, towering higher and higher until he stood nearly 200 feet tall, a white and red giant with a fin on his head and cosmic energy crackling around his hands. "Way big." Ben's voice boomed across the desert, now deep enough to create small sandstorms with each word. "Let's see how you like being the small one for a change." From Darkseid's perspective, Ben had transformed from an already impressive fighter to a colossus that blotted out the sun. Yet the new god showed no fear, merely crossing his arms as he looked up at the towering figure. Size, Darkseid called out, his voice carrying easily despite the distance, is irrelevant. Ben didn't bother with a retort. Instead, he brought his massive foot down directly on top of Darkseid, creating an impact that registered on seismographs hundreds of miles away. The desert floor collapsed, forming a crater nearly half a mile wide. When Ben lifted his foot, Darkseid was gone. For a moment, Ben thought he might have actually succeeded. Then a burning pain erupted between his shoulder blades as Darkseid's Omega beam struck him from behind. Ben staggered, nearly losing his balance, and turned to find Darkseid hovering in the air behind him, arms still crossed, expression unchanged. "Is this truly your mightiest form?" Darkseid asked. "I expected more from a device that can rewrite reality at the genetic level. I'm just getting started," Ben declared, bringing his hands together to form a cosmic energy beam that he fired directly at Darkseid. The blast was powerful enough to vaporize a small moon, the energy so intense that the air itself ignited. Darkseid made no move to dodge, taking the full force of the attack head-on. When the light faded and the dust settled, Darkseid remained, his clothing somewhat tattered but his body unharmed. "Impressive," the new god acknowledged. "But not enough." His eyes flared, and Omega beams more powerful than any he'd unleashed before struck Ben directly in the chest, right where the Omnitrix symbol was located. The pain was beyond anything Ben had experienced, as if every cell in his massive body was being torn apart and reassembled wrong. Way Big fell to one knee, then collapsed entirely, the impact sending shockwaves across the desert floor. The Omnitrix symbol on his chest sparked and flashed erratically, and in a final burst of green energy, Ben reverted to human form, lying battered in the center of an enormous crater. Darkseid descended slowly, touching down beside Ben's prone form. "Your resistance is at an end. The device belongs to Darkseid now." Ben tried to move, to reach for the Omnitrix again, but his body wouldn't respond. The watch itself seemed damaged, its interface flickering between green and red. "Not over yet," Ben managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Darkseid reached down, his massive hand extending toward Ben's wrist, only to be intercepted by a red and blue blur that slammed into him with the force of a comet. Superman had arrived, driving Darkseid away from Ben with a barrage of punches. "It's over when we say it's over, Darkseid." The rest of the Justice League appeared moments later, Batman dropping from a javelin craft, Wonder Woman flying in with her sword drawn, Flash arriving in a streak of lightning, Green Lantern descending on a construct platform alongside Cyborg and Martian Manhunter. Ben had never been so happy to see anyone in his life. "Took you guys long enough," he joked weakly as Batman knelt beside him. "Conserve your strength," Batman advised, quickly examining Ben's injuries. "The Omnitrix?" "Damaged," Ben confirmed. "That last blast hit it directly. I can feel it trying to reboot, but..." A thunderous impact interrupted him as Superman and Darkseid exchanged earth-shattering blows. The Justice League moved in perfect coordination, attacking Darkseid from multiple angles while Green Lantern created a protective bubble around Ben and Batman. "We need to get you to safety," Batman said. "Can you stand?" Ben tried, managing to sit up despite the pain. "I think so. But I'm not leaving. Not when everyone's fighting because of me." "This isn't just about you or the Omnitrix anymore," Batman told him. "Darkseid's attacks have killed civilians in Metropolis. This is about justice now." The battle around them intensified, with Darkseid holding his own against the entire League. His Omega beams cut through Green Lantern constructs, forcing the hero to constantly reform his shields. Wonder Woman's sword actually managed to draw blood from the new god's cheek, burning her a backhand that sent her crashing through a distant mesa. "I need to help," Ben insisted, looking down at the Omnitrix. Its interface had stabilized somewhat, now showing a solid red. "Come on, reboot already." As if responding to his frustration, the Omnitrix suddenly beeped and announced, "Emergency protocol activated." DNA scan complete. New transformation unlocked. What? Ben stared at the device in surprise as its interface turned green again, but with a strange pattern he'd never seen before. What new transformation? Batman's eyes narrowed behind his cowl. Darkseid's energy. The Omnitrix must have sampled it during the attack. Ben's eyes widened. It sampled a new god's DNA. Is that even possible? One way to find out, Batman said grimly. Ben nodded, determination replacing his pain as he activated the Omnitrix. The holographic interface showed a silhouette he didn't recognize, a towering, imposing figure. Going hero. Ben called out, slapping down on the watch. The transformation was unlike any he'd experienced before. Green energy exploded outward, momentarily blinding everyone on the battlefield. Ben felt his body changing, power beyond anything he'd known flooding through him. His skin hardened like living stone, his muscles expanded with godlike strength, and cosmic awareness flooded his mind. When the light faded, Ben stood transformed into a being that resembled a younger, green-tinged version of Darkseid himself, but with the Omnitrix symbol prominently displayed on his chest. "Whoa," Ben said, his voice now carrying the same resonance as Darkseid's. "This is intense." Darkseid himself had paused in his battle with the Justice League, his eyes fixed on Ben's new form with something approaching genuine shock. "Impossible. The device has sampled the essence of a new god. I'm calling this one Omega," Ben decided, examining his stone-like hands as energy crackled between his fingers. "And I think it's time for round 2. The Justice League members backed away, recognizing the confrontation had changed. Superman hovered nearby, ready to intervene if necessary, but allowing Ben to face Darkseid directly. "You are no god," Darkseid declared, recovering from his surprise. "Merely a child playing with powers beyond your comprehension." "Maybe," Ben agreed, taking a step forward. "But I've been figuring out new aliens on the fly since I was 10 years old. Let's see what this one can do." His eyes glowed green, and instead of Omega beams, he released what could only be described as Omega waves, concentric circles of energy that expanded outward, distorting space itself around Darkseid. The new god attempted to counter with his own Omega beams, but Ben's attack wasn't destructive in nature, it was transformative, temporarily altering the fundamental properties of matter. Darkseid found himself suddenly moving in slow motion, as if trapped in molasses, the very air around him densified to near solid state. "Interesting," Ben observed, genuinely surprised by his new powers. "Looks like this form doesn't just copy your abilities, it adapts them, changes them. Very handy." He advanced on the temporarily immobilized Darkseid, cosmic energy gathering around his fists. "Now, let's see about sending you back where you came from." Darkseid struggled against the spatial distortion, his godlike will gradually overcoming the effect. "Your command of new god abilities is impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "But inexperienced. Raw." With a tremendous effort, he shattered the distortion field, reality snapping back to normal around him. Without hesitation, he launched himself at Ben, the two colliding with enough force to create a shockwave that knocked the observing Justice League members back. What followed was a battle unlike anything the desert had ever witnessed, two godlike beings trading blows that could shatter mountains, unleashing energies that warped the fabric of reality around them. Ben found that his new form not only granted him physical abilities to match Darkseid but an intuitive understanding of cosmic forces he'd never imagined. "You learn quickly," Darkseid observed as they grappled, locked in a test of pure strength. "But you lack the experience of eons. The understanding that comes only from true godhood." "Maybe," Ben conceded, green energy crackling around him as he pushed back against Darkseid with equal force. "But I've got something you don't." "And what might that be?" Darkseid asked, genuinely curious. Ben grinned, a strangely disconcerting expression on his new god face. "Creativity." He slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, but instead of transforming into something else, the symbol glowed brighter as Ben accessed a function he rarely used, fusion mode. Omega Big. Ben announced as his already impressive form grew to match Way Big's towering height, but retaining the new god abilities of his Omega transformation. Now standing over 200 feet tall and possessing both cosmic and new god powers, Ben looked down at Darkseid, who for the first time appeared genuinely concerned. "This ends now," Ben declared, his voice echoing across dimensions. "Go back to Apokolips, Darkseid. The Omnitrix stays with me." He raised one massive hand, creating a swirling vortex of green energy that resembled a boom tube but was entirely of Ben's creation. The portal expanded, its pull focused specifically on Darkseid's energy signature. Darkseid resisted, his feet creating deep furrows in the desert floor as he was dragged toward the portal. "This is not over, wielder of the Omnitrix. I will return, and what belongs to Darkseid will be Darkseid's." Yeah, Ben replied, the strain of maintaining the portal evident in his voice. "I've heard that before too." With a final surge of power, Ben forced the portal to complete its connection to Apokolips. Darkseid, unable to resist the combined new god and cosmic energies, was pulled through, his final roar of defiance cut short as the portal snapped closed behind him. The silence that followed was deafening. Ben stood motionless for a moment, his enormous form silhouetted against the desert sky, before the Omnitrix began to beep rapidly. The fusion was unstable, too powerful to maintain for long, and in a cascade of green energy, Ben reverted first to his base Omega form, then back to human entirely. He collapsed to his knees in exhaustion, breathing heavily. That was intense. The Justice League approached cautiously, Superman reaching him first. "Ben. Are you alright?" Ben looked up with a tired grin. "Define alright. I just went toe-to-toe with a literal god, transformed into a new god myself, and created a cross-dimensional portal on the fly." He held up his wrist, where the Omnitrix was once again flashing red. "But yeah, I think I'm okay." Batman knelt beside him, examining the Omnitrix with narrowed eyes. "Your device absorbed and adapted Darkseid's genetic material. I didn't think that was possible." "Me neither," Ben admitted. "The Omnitrix surprises me sometimes. It has fail-safes and protocols I don't even know about until they activate." "You saved many lives today," Wonder Woman said, extending a hand to help Ben to his feet. "You fought with the heart of a true warrior." Ben accepted her help, wobbling slightly as he stood. "Thanks. Though I have a feeling Darkseid isn't going to stay banished for long." "He never does," Superman agreed grimly. "But for now, Earth is safe. And that's what matters." Flash sipped over, excitement evident despite the exhaustion they all felt. "That was amazing. You turned into Darkseid, but like, a good version. We need to come up with a better name than Omega though. How about Cosmocide? God Ben? New Ben?" Despite his fatigue, Ben laughed. "I think I'll stick with Omega for now. Naming aliens is kind of my thing." As the group began making their way toward the javelin for evacuation, Batman fell into step beside Ben. "The real question now is how to get you home." Ben glanced down at the Omnitrix, still in recharge mode. "Yeah. I've been dimension hopping before, but usually I have help from Professor Paradox or Azimuth himself." "We have resources," Batman assured him. "The League has encountered other universes before. We'll find a way." Ben nodded gratefully, then looked back at the massive battlefield that stretched behind them, the shattered landscape bearing testimony to the scale of the conflict they'd just survived. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "back in my universe, I've read comics about you guys my whole life. Always wondered what it would be like to meet you in person." He smiled tiredly. "Gotta say, reality lived up to the legend." Superman placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. "The feeling is mutual, Ben Tennyson. You'd make a fine addition to the Justice League." Ben's eyes widened. "Seriously? That's like, the coolest thing anyone has ever said to me." As they boarded the Javelin, Ben took one last look at the desert battlefield. His first day in the DC universe had been more intense than he could have imagined, but he had a feeling the adventure was just beginning. Darkseid would return, and there was still the matter of finding his way home. But for now, he was content to have fought alongside his heroes and emerged victorious. Not bad for a kid with a watch. Chapter 2, Heroes United. 3 days after the desert showdown with Darkseid, Ben found himself standing in the Watchtower's main lab, watching as Cyborg, Batman, and the Flash worked on what they were calling a dimensional resonance scanner. It looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, which was saying something, considering Ben's own adventures. So this thing can actually find my home universe? Ben asked, leaning against a workbench. Cyborg adjusted something inside an open panel. That's the theory. It's designed to detect quantum signatures matching the residual energy still radiating from your Omnitrix. Each universe has its own distinct vibrational frequency. Like tuning a radio to the right station, Flash added, moving components around at super speed. We just need to find your frequency. Ben nodded, glancing down at the Omnitrix. It had fully recharged after the battle with Darkseid, and according to Cyborg's scans, it had completely integrated the Omega form into its database. That was both cool and slightly terrifying. Any luck isolating that new god DNA the watch absorbed? He asked. Batman didn't look up from the device he was calibrating. Martian Manhunter and Dr. Fate are consulting on that. Godlike entities don't follow normal genetic rules. Tell me about it, Ben sighed. I still can't believe the Omnitrix sampled Darkseid's DNA. That's never happened with energy beings before. Perhaps it recognized something compatible, a new voice suggested. Ben turned to see Martian Manhunter entering the lab. New gods appear to exist in a quantum state between energy and matter. Your device may have detected this duality. Ben was about to respond and an alarm suddenly blared throughout the Watchtower. Red lights flashed, and the lab's central display screen automatically switched to show the Earth below. Multiple boom tubes were opening across the planet. They're back, Batman said simply, already moving toward the door. And they're not just targeting Metropolis this time. The main command center of the Watchtower was a flurry of activity when they arrived. Superman stood at the central console, issuing orders as Justice League members rushed to teleporter platforms. Boom tube signatures detected in Gotham, Central City, Coast City, Washington, D.C., and Paris, Superman reported as Batman approached. Different pattern than before, smaller, more precise incursions. They're looking for something, Batman concluded. Or someone. His gaze shifted to Ben. Ben felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Darkseid still after the Omnitrix. And he's changing tactics, Wonder Woman added, studying the tactical display. These aren't invasion forces. They're strike teams. Green Lantern floated down from an upper level. I've got reports from Coast City. These aren't regular parademons. They're elite units, led by some kind of armored commander. Darkseid's Furies, Martian Manhunter identified. His personal guard and special operations forces. Ben twisted the dial on the Omnitrix, cycling through his available aliens. So what's the plan? You guys can't defend 5 cities at once. We split up, Superman decided. Flash, take Central City. Batman and Robin handle Gotham. Lantern, return to Coast City. Wonder Woman, you take Paris. He looked at Ben. You should remain here where it's, if you say, safe, I'm going to transform into Wrath and we'll have words, Ben interrupted, crossing his arms. They're after me and the Omnitrix. I'm not hiding while people get hurt because of it. Superman and Batman exchanged a glance that contained an entire conversation. He comes with me, Batman finally said. Gotham's under attack, and if these forces are targeting the Omnitrix, better to have Ben where I can directly monitor the situation. Agreed, Superman nodded. Cyborg, continue work on the dimensional scanner. The sooner we can get Ben home, the better, for everyone's sake. Ben couldn't argue with that logic. As amazing as meeting the Justice League had been, interdimensional wars weren't exactly on his bucket list. Let's go then, he said, already turning the Omnitrix dial again. I've got a few aliens that'll feel right at home in Gotham. Gotham City was burning. Not the whole city, but enough of it to paint the night sky orange with reflected flames. The boom tubes had opened in 3 locations simultaneously, the financial district, the docks, and directly in front of GCPD headquarters. Elite parademons poured through, led by armored commanders that moved with deadly precision. The Batwing sliced through the smoke-filled air, Batman at the controls while Ben peered through the canopy at the chaos below. This doesn't look like a capture mission, Ben observed grimly. They're causing maximum damage. They're drawing us out, Batman replied. Standard search tactic, flush the target into the open. The aircraft banked sharply, circling toward the financial district where the tallest buildings in Gotham were under attack. Through the smoke, Ben could see a winged figure engaged with the parademons, someone in a blue and black suit. Nightwing is already on site, Batman reported. Robin's handling the GCPD attack. Ben nodded. He'd been briefed on Batman's former and current partners during the flight. The idea of Batman having a whole team was something the comics in his world sometimes touched on, but seeing it in action was different. So what's the play? Ben asked, hand hovering over the Omnitrix. I've got lots of options for urban combat. We need to identify the commander, Batman replied, bringing the Batwing into a hover position. These units don't operate independently. Someone's directing them, and that someone will have a direct line to Darkseid. Ben grinned. Sounds like a job for, he slammed down on the Omnitrix, green light filling the cockpit, big chill. His body transformed into a moth-like alien with blue skin and large wings. Without waiting for the canopy to open, Big Chill turned intangible and phased right through it, emerging into the smoke-filled Gotham air. I'll find your commander. Ben called back as Batman opened the canopy and fired a grappling line toward a nearby building. Ben soared through the chaos, his intangible form passing harmlessly through debris and energy blasts. Below, Nightwing was putting on a clinic in acrobatic combat, his Eskrima sticks crackling with electricity as he danced between parademons, never staying still long enough to present a target. A concentrated energy blast from a nearby rooftop almost caught Nightwing, missing by inches. Ben turned toward its source and spotted a figure unlike the other attackers, a female warrior in ornate armor with a crackling energy whip coiled at her side. Found you, Ben whispered, turning invisible as he approached. The commander was speaking into some kind of communication device. No sign of the Omnitrix bearer in this sector. Continuing search pattern alpha. Ben positioned himself directly behind her, then reverted to tangibility just long enough to exhale a freezing breath that encased her legs in solid ice. The warrior spun, her reflexes inhumanly fast, the energy whip lashing out, but it passed harmlessly through Ben's intangible form. Looking for me? Ben taunted, becoming visible. Sorry to drop in unannounced. The alien shifter, she snarled, her eyes narrowing behind her helmet. Bernadette will be pleased. Before Ben could ask who Bernadette was, the warrior slammed her fist into the ice encasing her legs, shattering it instantly. Her whip cracked again, this time radiating a strange energy field that somehow affected even Ben's intangible state, causing him pain where it passed through him. What the? Ben gasped, solidifying reflexively. How did you do that? Apokolipsian technology, child, the warrior smirked. Adapted specifically to counter your abilities based on our initial encounter. That was bad news. If Darkseid had already developed countermeasures to his aliens after just one battle. The warrior pressed her advantage, the whip lashing out again. Ben narrowly avoided it by taking to the air, then retaliated with another freezing breath that the warrior dodged with inhuman agility. You have nowhere to run, she declared, touching a control on her armor. All across Gotham, Ben could hear the parademons suddenly changing their attack patterns, converging toward their position. Darkseid requires your presence. Yeah, not happening, Ben replied, slapping the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Green light flashed, and where Big Chill had floated, a new alien appeared, a small, frog-like creature with oversized eyes and an enormous brain visible beneath a transparent cranium. Gray matter. Ben announced, immediately regretting the transformation. Wait, no. I wanted Humongosaur. Stupid Omnitrix. He dropped toward the rooftop, barely 6 inches tall and facing an Apokolipsian warrior who looked very pleased with this development. The small form, she observed with satisfaction. Perfect. Gray Matter's tiny legs barely touched the rooftop before he was sprinting, his enhanced intellect calculating optimal escape trajectories even as he ran. Need to recalibrate the transformation selector, he muttered to himself. The dimensional shift must have altered the Omnitrix's interface calibration. A shadow passed overhead, and Ben glanced up to see Batman swinging toward them, his cape spread like wings against the flame-lit sky. The warrior saw him too. The bat, she hissed, her whip lashing out to intercept him. Batman twisted mid-air, the whip missing him by centimeters as he released his grapnel line and dropped directly onto the rooftop. He immediately launched into a series of strikes that would have incapacitated any normal opponent, but the warrior blocked or evaded each one with disturbing ease. I am Lashina of the Female Furies, she announced, counterattacking with blinding speed. You are not my target, human. Batman ducked under her whip, a batarang appearing in his hand. Your target is under my protection. Meanwhile, Ben had reached the edge of the roof and was examining the complex electronics built into the warrior's discarded communication device. If I can just reconfigure this to emit a counter-frequency to the boom tube generators. His tiny gray matter hands moved with precise speed, rewiring components and reprogramming the alien technology. Despite the chaos around him, this was where the Galvan form excelled, solving technical problems on the fly. Behind him, Batman was holding his own against Lashina through sheer skill and preparation, but the warrior's superior strength and speed were beginning to tell. A whip strike caught Batman's ankle, sending an energy pulse through his body that dropped him to one knee momentarily. Batman! Ben called out in his squeaky gray matter voice. Keep her busy for 10 more seconds. 9 is all you get, Batman replied through gritted teeth, throwing a smoke pellet directly into Lashina's face. The dense cloud bought him just enough time to regain his footing and re-engage. Ben connected the final circuit in his improvised device and activated it. A high-pitched whine filled the air, and across Gotham, the boom tubes began to fluctuate wildly. What have you done? Lashina demanded, her attention momentarily diverted from Batman. Reversed the quantum signature of your boom tubes, Ben explained, unable to keep the smugness from his tiny voice. They're about to collapse and take your invasion force with them. Lashina snarled and lunged toward Ben, but Batman intercepted her with a flying kick that staggered even her enhanced physiology. The warrior recovered quickly, but her expression had changed from confidence to calculation. This is not over, she declared, touching a control on her armor. A personal boom tube opened behind her. Darkseid will have the Omnitrix, one way or another. She stepped backward into the portal, which snapped shut just as Ben's device reached peak intensity. Across Gotham, the larger boom tubes began to implode, sucking parademons back through before collapsing entirely. In seconds, the attack was over, leaving only damaged buildings and bewildered emergency responders in its wake. Batman approached Ben, who was still in gray matter form. Quick thinking. Gray matter has its uses, Ben replied, tapping the Omnitrix symbol to revert to human form. The transformation complete, he stood up and dusted himself off. But that was too close. They specifically targeted me. Batman nodded grimly. And they came prepared. The Female Furies are Darkseid's elite warriors. If he's sending them, he's escalating. Ben glanced down at the Omnitrix. She said something about someone named Bernadette being pleased they found me. Bernadette, Batman repeated, his expression darkening further. Leader of the female Furies in Darkseid's absence. This confirms my suspicion, these attacks are coordinated from Apokolips. Darkseid is directing them remotely. A new voice joined the conversation. And doing a pretty thorough job of it. Ben turned to see Nightwing climbing onto the rooftop, looking battle-worn but uninjured. The young man's eyes widened slightly upon seeing Ben. So you're the interdimensional visitor with the shape-shifting watch, Nightwing said, extending a hand. Dick Grayson. Nice to meet you. Ben Tennyson, Ben replied, shaking the offered hand. Huge fan, by the way. In my world, you're a comic book character, Nightwing finished with a smile. Batman filled me in. Gotta say, that's both flattering and slightly disturbing. Batman cut in, all business. Report. Attacks across the city are subsiding, Nightwing reported immediately. Robin contained the GCPD situation with Batgirl's help. Whatever shut down the boom tubes worked throughout Gotham. That was me, Ben said, unable to keep a note of pride from his voice. Gray matter special. Nightwing raised an eyebrow. Gray matter. Little alien with super intelligence, Ben explained. Good for tech problems, not so much for direct combat. Batman was already at the edge of the roof, looking out over the city. We need to check in with the League. If Gotham was targeted this precisely, the other cities may have faced similar coordinated attacks. As if on cue, the communicator on Batman's wrist beeped. Batman, Superman's voice came through, sounding tense. We have a situation. The attacks were diversions. Batman's eyes narrowed. Explain. While we were spread thin defending the cities, a separate force infiltrated STR labs in Metropolis, Superman replied. They stole something. What did they take? Batman demanded. There was a pause before Superman answered. Research data. On the Phantom Zone projector. Ben saw Batman's expression shift subtly, a tightening around the eyes that somehow conveyed deep concern despite the cowl hiding most of his features. What's the Phantom Zone? Ben asked. A dimensional prison, Batman explained tersely. Originally Kryptonian technology. If Darkseid gains control of it. He didn't need to finish the thought. Ben's mind was already racing through the implications. He could use it to create a direct bridge between dimensions. Maybe even to my world. Or trap you in a pocket dimension where he could take the Omnitrix at his leisure, Nightwing added grimly. The communicator beeped again. All League members returned to the Watchtower, Superman ordered. Emergency Protocol 7. Batman was already firing his grapnel gun. We need to move. Now. The Justice League conference room was filled to capacity when Ben arrived with Batman and Nightwing. Every member who wasn't actively containing the aftermath of the attacks was present, either physically or via holographic projection. The atmosphere was tense, faces grim as Superman brought the meeting to order. The attacks on 5 major cities were coordinated diversions, Superman began without preamble. While we were engaged, a specialized strike team led by Kanto, Darkseid's master assassin, breached STR Labs' Quantum Research Division. They knew exactly what they were looking for, Cyborg added, projecting data onto the main screen. They bypassed more valuable technology to access the Phantom Zone research database. In and out in under 3 minutes. So they've got the theoretical blueprints for a Phantom Zone projector, Green Lantern summarized. Can they actually build one? That's Kryptonian tech. Superman's expression was grim. With apocalyptic technology and resources? Yes. But why the Phantom Zone? Wonder Woman asked. What does Darkseid gain from this specific technology? All eyes turned to Ben, who shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny of so many legendary heroes. I think I might know, he said, stepping forward. The Omnitrix doesn't just store alien DNA, it contains a pocket dimension where the actual genetic samples are kept. If Darkseid knows this, he could use the Phantom Zone technology to access the Omnitrix's internal dimension directly, Batman concluded, bypassing its defenses entirely. The implications hung heavy in the air. Ben looked down at the device on his wrist with new concern. If he gets access to all the DNA samples at once, he could create an army of shapeshifters, Superman finished. Or worse, use the genetic material to enhance his existing forces. Flash raised a hand. Not to state the obvious, but couldn't we just send Ben home before Darkseid figures this out? Problem solved, right? I've been working on that, Cyborg reported, bringing up new data on the screen. The dimensional scanner is operational, but there's a problem. The quantum frequency of Ben's home universe is fluctuating, making it difficult to establish a stable connection. English, please. Ben requested. Cyborg grimaced. The door home keeps moving. We can find it, but we can't keep it open long enough for a safe transit. How long until you can stabilize it? Batman asked. 3 days, minimum, Cyborg answered. And that's assuming optimal conditions. Superman nodded decisively. Then we have 3 days to prepare for Darkseid's next move. He won't wait longer than that to deploy a Phantom Zone projector. We should take the fight to him, Wonder Woman suggested. An assault on Apokolips itself. Too risky, Batman countered. Darkseid's power is magnified in his own domain. We'd be playing into his hands. Ben had been quiet, processing everything, but now he spoke up. What about a trap? Use the Omnitrix as bait, but on our terms. All attention returned to him. Superman gestured for him to continue. Darkseid wants the Omnitrix, Ben explained. So let's let him think he can get it. Set up a situation where he has to come personally, then spring the trap when he's committed. Batman studied Ben with what might have been approval. It could work. Darkseid's pride is a weakness we can exploit. But we'd need something significant as bait, Martian Manhunter observed. Darkseid is no fool. The Omega transformation, Ben said immediately. The Omnitrix absorbed his DNA. That's gotta be driving him crazy, the idea that someone else has access to new god powers. Flash whistled. Talk about poking the bear. It's too dangerous, Superman began, but Ben cut him off. With all due respect, I've been doing this hero thing a long time too. I've faced my share of would-be conquerors. Vilgax has been after the Omnitrix for years, and I've always stopped him. Darkseid is more powerful, sure, but the principle is the same. The room fell silent as the Justice League members exchanged glances. Finally, Batman spoke. Ben's right. We need to control the engagement, not react to Darkseid's moves. A trap could work, but we'd need to execute it perfectly. And where exactly would we spring this trap? Green Lantern asked. Somewhere isolated, obviously. The Fortress of Solitude, Superman suggested after a moment's thought. Remote, defensible, and equipped with Kryptonian technology that might counter Apokoliptian tactics. I can add Green Lantern core defenses, Hal Jordan offered. Guardian-level protective algorithms. And I can integrate Amazonian mystical barriers, Wonder Woman added. A threefold defense of science, willpower, and divine magic. Ben nodded, impressed by how quickly the League shifted from disagreement to coordinated planning. So what's the plan? How do we let Darkseid know the Omnitrix has his DNA without actually telling him directly? Flash grinned. We put on a show. The show turned out to be a carefully orchestrated demonstration of Ben's Omega form in a remote location that the League knew was under surveillance by Apokoliptian spies. The Atacama Desert in Chile, one of the driest, most desolate places on Earth, became their stage. Ben stood in the center of a vast salt flat, surrounded by measuring equipment that Cyborg and Batman had set up to create the impression of scientific study. Superman, Wonder Woman, and Green Lantern hovered at a respectful distance, ostensibly monitoring the proceedings but actually scanning for any sign of enemy observation. "You sure they're watching?" Ben asked through the communicator Batman had given him. "Confirmed," Batman's voice replied from the Batwing circling high above. "Apocalyptian energy signatures detected on the ridge to your north. Observation drones, most likely." Ben nodded, taking a deep breath. "Showtime, then." He activated the Omnitrix, cycling through the holographic display until he found the silhouette he needed. The alien form that had absorbed Darkseid's DNA looked imposing even in outline. "Going hero," Ben called out, slapping down on the watch. The transformation was as intense as he remembered from the battle. Green energy exploded outward as his body morphed into the Omega form, gray stone-like skin, imposing musculature, eyes that glowed with cosmic energy, and the Omnitrix symbol prominently displayed on his chest. The moment the transformation completed, Ben could feel the power coursing through him. It was different from his other aliens, a constant awareness of cosmic forces, a sense of contained infinity. No wonder Darkseid was so arrogant. With power like this, it would be easy to start seeing yourself as a god. "Omega," Ben announced, his voice carrying the same resonance as Darkseid's. For the benefit of their unseen audience, he added, "DNA sample stabilized. New god genetic material successfully integrated." He proceeded to demonstrate some of the form's abilities, creating localized gravity wells, generating Omega waves, his variant of Darkseid's Omega beams, and manipulating spatial dimensions in small, controlled bursts. All the while, Cyborg's equipment took genuine readings, collecting valuable data on the transformation's capabilities. Energy output exceeding predictions, Cyborg reported over the comms, playing his part. "The subject has successfully replicated approximately 30% of Darkseid's known abilities, with unique variations. Recommend testing the durability threshold," Batman added, still circling overhead. "Superman, proceed with stress test alpha." This too was part of the performance. Superman descended, approaching Ben with a solemn expression. "Ready?" he asked quietly. Ben nodded. "Don't hold back too much. This needs to look good." Superman's first punch was measured but significant, striking Ben squarely in the chest. To both their surprise, Ben barely moved, the impact absorbed by his new god physiology. "Ha," Ben said, looking down at himself. "That was like getting hit by a minor league pitch." Superman raised an eyebrow, then struck again with considerably more force. This time Ben slid backwards several feet, but remained standing and uninjured. "Now that felt like Superman," Ben commented with a grin. They continued the stress test, escalating gradually until they were engaged in what looked like a genuine battle to anyone observing. Superman unleashed his heat vision, which Ben countered with Omega waves, creating a spectacular energy collision midair. "They're transmitting data back to Apokolips," Batman reported. "Energy spike in their communication array." "Good," Ben replied between dodging Superman's attacks. "Let Darkseid see what he's missing." For the finale, Ben accessed a capability he discovered during their planning sessions, the ability to create mini boom tubes, similar to Darkseid's method of transportation but with a distinctive green energy signature. He opened one directly behind Superman, then another above him, effectively teleporting the Man of Steel into a position where Ben could catch him in a gravitational bind. It lasted only seconds before Superman broke free, but the demonstration had served its purpose. "Surveillance drones retreating," Batman reported. "Data transmission complete." They took the bait. Ben reverted to human form, the green flash marking the end of their performance. He let out a long breath, feeling the usual post-transformation fatigue. "Think it worked?" "Only one way to find out," Superman replied, landing beside him. "Now we prepare for Darkseid's response." The response came sooner than expected. Barely 6 hours after their demonstration in the Atacama, as the Justice League was finalizing preparations at the Fortress of Solitude, a massive boom tube tore open the sky above Metropolis. Unlike previous incursions, this wasn't an invasion, it was a broadcast. Darkseid's face appeared in the sky itself, a cosmic projection visible to the entire city. His stony features were set in their usual expression of contemptuous determination, but there was something new in his glowing red eyes, a cold fury that hadn't been present before. People of Earth, his voice resonated across the city, your protectors harbor something that belongs to Darkseid. The genetic material of a new god is not for lesser beings to possess or manipulate. In the Fortress of Solitude, the Justice League watched the broadcast on a crystal monitor, expressions grim. He took the bait, Flash observed unnecessarily. Silence, Superman ordered, focusing on Darkseid's words. To the one called Ben Tennyson, Darkseid continued, surrender yourself and your device to my forces within 12 hours, or witness the consequences of defiance. To demonstrate my resolve. The image shifted to show a massive weapon emerging from the boom tube, a cannon-like device of apocalyptic design, bristling with alien technology and pulsing with ominous energy. This is a dimensional destabilizer, Darkseid explained. It targets the quantum frequency of specific realities. Should you refuse my generous offer, I will use it to sever the connection between your home universe and this one, permanently. Ben felt the blood drain from his face. He's bluffing. He can't actually do that, can he? Cyborg's expression was deadly serious. Theoretically. With Phantom Zone technology as a base and apocalyptic science. It's possible. He would trap you here forever, Batman concluded. Cutting off any possibility of return. Darkseid's face returned to the projection. 12 hours, Ben Tennyson. Come alone to these coordinates, or lose your home forever. Numbers appeared briefly in the sky. The choice is yours. The boom tube closed, taking the projection with it, but leaving the massive weapon hovering ominously above Metropolis as a reminder of the threat. The fortress fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Ben spoke. Well, that complicates things. Superman turned to him, expression compassionate but resolute. This changes nothing. The trap proceeds as planned. But my home, Ben began. Is safe for now, Batman interrupted. Darkseid is applying pressure, attempting to force a rash decision. We have 12 hours to implement our countermeasures. And if he's not bluffing? Ben challenged. What if he really can cut off my universe permanently? Cyborg stepped forward. The dimensional scanner picked up the energy signature of that weapon. It's complex, but not beyond analysis. Give me a few hours, and I might be able to determine if the threat is genuine. Ben nodded, taking a deep breath to calm himself. Okay. So we stick to the plan. With modifications, Batman added. Darkseid expects you to surrender. We can use that expectation. Wonder Woman placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. We will not abandon your home, Ben Tennyson. The League protects all innocents, regardless of which universe they inhabit. Her words were reassuring, but Ben couldn't shake the knot of worry in his stomach. The thought of never seeing Grandpa Max or Gwen again, of being trapped forever in this universe, was almost overwhelming. He looked down at the Omnitrix. It had gotten him into this mess, but it might be their only way out too. I need some air, he said abruptly, heading toward one of the fortress's crystal passages. Superman made to follow, but Batman stopped him with a gesture. Let him process. We have work to do. The Arctic air was bitingly cold, but Ben barely noticed as he stood on one of the fortress's exterior platforms, looking out over the endless ice fields. The Omnitrix felt unusually heavy on his wrist, the weight of responsibility it represented never more apparent. Nice view, a voice commented behind him. Puts things in perspective, doesn't it? Ben turned to see Nightwing approaching, bundled in a winter suit but still moving with his characteristic grace. Thought you were coordinating Gotham's defenses, Ben said. Nightwing shrugged. Batman called me in. Said something about needing someone who understands what it's like to be a teenage hero with the weight of the world on their shoulders. Despite everything, Ben smiled slightly. He said that. Well, his exact words were, Grayson, get to the fortress. The kid needs perspective. But I'm fluent in Batman. Ben turned back to the view, Nightwing coming to stand beside him. So, the former Robin said after a moment, dimensional blackmail. That's a new one, even for us. Just when I think I've seen everything, Ben agreed with a hollow laugh. I've time-traveled, fought interdimensional conquerors, even reset the entire universe once. But this hits closer to home. Nightwing suggested. Literally, Ben confirmed. I've got people waiting for me. Family. Friends. A whole life. If Darkseid really can cut off my universe. Nightwing was quiet for a moment. You know, when I first started as Robin, I used to worry constantly about making the wrong decision. One mistake could mean someone's life. Batman's life, even. How'd you deal with it? Ben asked. I realized something important, Nightwing replied. Being a hero isn't about being perfect. It's about doing the best you can with what you have, where you are. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Like potentially sacrificing my way home to stop Darkseid, Ben said quietly. Nightwing turned to face him. The Ben Tennyson I've heard about from the League wouldn't hesitate to make that sacrifice if it meant saving innocence. In either universe. Ben met his gaze, finding unexpected understanding there. Nightwing wasn't much older than him, but there was a depth of experience in his eyes that resonated with Ben's own journey. You're right, Ben acknowledged. I just needed to hear it from someone else, I guess. That's what teams are for, Nightwing said with a smile. Now, want to help me convince Batman that my Darkseid distraction plan, involving 3 tons of glitter is completely viable? Ben couldn't help laughing at that. I'm pretty sure he'd throw us both into the Phantom Zone himself. Worth it though, Nightwing grinned, turning back toward the entrance. Come on. The real planning session is starting, and rumor has it Flash brought snacks. As they headed back inside, Ben felt the knot in his stomach loosen slightly. Whatever happened with Darkseid, he wasn't facing it alone. The plan, when finalized, was both elegantly simple and devastatingly complex in its execution. Darkseid expected Ben to surrender at the coordinates provided, a remote area in the Mojave Desert. Instead, Ben would appear to comply while the Justice League implemented a multi-layered trap designed to neutralize Darkseid and his dimensional weapon simultaneously. 8 hours into Darkseid's 12-hour ultimatum, they gathered for final preparations. Cyborg's analysis confirms our suspicions, Batman reported to the assembled heroes. The dimensional destabilizer is functional, but incomplete. Darkseid needs the Omnitrix itself to calibrate it properly to Ben's home universe. So the threat is real, but he can't actually follow through yet, Superman clarified. Correct, Cyborg confirmed. But given enough time with the Phantom Zone research, he could complete it independently. Ben absorbed this information with mixed emotions. So I'm still playing bait, but with slightly better odds. Significantly better, Batman corrected. Darkseid must take you alive and with the Omnitrix intact. That gives us an advantage. Wonder Woman pointed to the tactical display. Our strategy remains 3-pronged. Superman, Flash, and I will engage Darkseid directly. Batman leads the stealth team to disable the dimensional weapon. Cyborg coordinates from the Watchtower, maintaining our communications against Apokolipsian interference. And I transform into Omega and pretend to surrender until the trap is sprung, Ben finished. Then switch to whatever alien form is most useful in the chaos. Remember, Darkseid will be expecting the Omega transformation, Batman cautioned. He'll have countermeasures. Ben nodded. That's why I've been working with Cyborg on some custom transformations. He glanced at the cybernetic hero with a grin. Show them. Cyborg projected a new display, a diagram of the Omnitrix with previously unseen functionalities highlighted. Ben's device has a fusion capability he rarely uses. It allows him to combine attributes of multiple alien forms simultaneously. During the first battle, I used it to combine Omega with Way Big, Ben explained. But that was instinctive, uncontrolled. Now we've mapped out specific combinations that might give us an edge. Fascinating, Martian Manhunter commented. Your device continues to surprise. Flash zipped around the display, studying it from all angles. So you could combine, say, super speed with intangibility? Or strength with energy projection? The tactical applications are enormous. With limitations, Ben cautioned. The more complex the fusion, the more unstable it becomes. And the Omnitrix needs significantly more recharge time afterward. Single, strategic use, then, Batman concluded. Save it for when it matters most. The final hours of preparation passed quickly. Weapons were checked, communications tested, positions assigned. The League would deploy in stages, stealth teams first to establish surveillance, followed by the primary strike force taking hidden positions around the designated meeting point. Ben would arrive last, seemingly alone but actually surrounded by Earth's mightiest heroes, ready to spring the trap the moment Darkseid fully committed to the confrontation. As the deployment began, Superman took Ben aside for a final word. This isn't your burden to bear alone, he said, his expression serious. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, your priority is survival. The League can handle Darkseid. Ben appreciated the concern, but shook his head. With all due respect, Superman, we both know that's not true. Not entirely. Darkseid nearly beat you all last time, and that was before he was this motivated. Superman didn't deny it. Just be careful. The Omnitrix is powerful, but, so is Darkseid, Ben finished. Believe me, I get it. I'll stick to the plan. Superman nodded, extending his hand. Good luck, Ben Tennyson. Ben shook it, still slightly awed to be standing with the Man of Steel. You too, Superman. The Mojave Desert stretched out under the merciless afternoon sun, heat waves distorting the air above the sand and rock. Ben stood alone at the exact coordinates Darkseid had provided, the Omnitrix primed and ready on his wrist. In position, he reported quietly into his communicator. Any sign of company? Negative, Batman's voice replied from his hidden location. But energy readings suggest interdimensional activity building. Stand by. Ben scanned the empty horizon, tension building in every muscle. The plan was solid, the League positioned perfectly, but an uneasy feeling gnawed at his gut. Something wasn't right. I don't like this, he muttered. It's too quiet. As if responding to his words, the air before him shimmered and tore apart, a boom tube opening with a thunderous crack. But instead of Darkseid, a single figure emerged, a tall, thin man in ornate green armor, carrying an intricate staff. Ben Tennyson, the man greeted with a slight bow. I am Darkseid, scientific advisor to Lord Darkseid. Where's your boss? Ben demanded, keeping his distance. The deal was surrender to Darkseid, not his lackey. Darkseid's thin lips curved into a smile that never reached his eyes. Lord Darkseid has many concerns beyond this minor transaction. I am fully authorized to accept your surrender and the device. In his ear, Batman's voice was tense. Something's wrong. Maintain position, do not engage. Ben's unease deepened. No deal. I speak to Darkseid directly, or the Omnitrix stays with me. Darkseid sighed theatrically. I anticipated your reluctance. He raised his staff, which began to glow with sickly yellow energy. Perhaps a demonstration of my master's resolve will convince you. The staff pulsed, and a holographic image appeared, a live feed showing the dimensional destabilizer weapon hovering above Metropolis. As Ben watched, the device powered up, energy building around its central core. Cyborg, Batman's voice came through the comm, confirm visual. Confirmed, Cyborg replied, his voice tight with urgency. The weapon is activating. Energy signature matches dimensional targeting protocols. Darkseid's smile widened. The device is currently calibrated to sever all quantum connections between this universe and yours. Once activated, the separation will be permanent. No technology in any dimension will be able to breach it. Ben's heart raced. This wasn't part of the plan. You're bluffing. Darkseid needs the Omnitrix to complete the calibration. An unfortunate misconception on your part, Darkseid replied smoothly. We've had hours to analyze the energy signature you so helpfully demonstrated in Chile. Not as precise as we might like, but sufficient for our purposes. In the comm, urgent voices overlapped, Superman to all teams, the weapon is active, Cyborg here, confirming power buildup, Wonder Woman engaging in Metropolis, Batman's voice cut through the chatter. Ben, stall him. We're repositioning. Ben's mind raced through options. If the weapon really could cut off his universe permanently. Fine, he said to Darkseid, raising his hands in apparent surrender. You win. But I need to deactivate the Omnitrix's security protocols first. Otherwise, it'll just go into lockdown when you try to remove it. Darkseid studied him suspiciously. Proceed, but slowly. Any sudden movements? Ben nodded, carefully bringing his hand to the Omnitrix. It's a complex sequence. Takes a minute. As he pretended to input commands into the watch, Ben whispered urgently into his comm, new plan needed. Fast. Working on it, Batman replied tersely. Cyborg is analyzing the weapon's energy signature for vulnerabilities. Darkseid was growing impatient. Enough delays. Complete the deactivation now. Almost done, Ben stalled. Just one more, his words were cut off as Darkseid's staff suddenly lashed out, striking the ground at Ben's feet. Energy tendrils erupted from the impact point, wrapping around Ben's legs and immobilizing him. My patience is exhausted, Darkseid declared. Lord Darkseid suspected treachery. The weapon activates now. He raised the staff again, clearly intending to send a signal to trigger the dimensional destabilizer. Ben had seconds to act. Going hero, he shouted, slapping down on the Omnitrix. Green light flashed as he transformed into a blue, moth-like alien. Big chill. Ben announced, his body instantly turning intangible and phasing through the energy tendrils. Darkseid's eyes widened in surprise, but he recovered quickly, touching a control on his armor. Activate countermeasures. From the boom tube behind him, a dozen specialized parademons emerged, each equipped with weapons that pulsed with the same strange energy Lashina's whip had generated, technology specifically designed to affect Ben's intangible form. That's not good, Ben muttered, taking to the air just as the first energy blast passed through where he'd been hovering. The desert erupted into chaos. Batman and Nightwing emerged from hiding, engaging the parademons from multiple angles. Flash appeared in a streak of red, attempting to disarm Darkseid, only to be repelled by a personal shield around the Apokolipsian scientist. The weapon is reaching critical power levels. Cyborg reported urgently through the comm, Superman and Wonder Woman are engaging in Metropolis, but they're facing heavy resistance. Ben dodged another volley of energy blasts, his mind racing. The trap had failed, they were split between two battlefields, and time was running out. I need to get to Metropolis, Ben decided. Big Chill isn't fast enough. He slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, transforming into a red, mantle-like alien. Jet Ray. Time to really move. The new form's incredible speed sent him rocketing into the sky, leaving the desert battle behind. Through the comm, he could hear the ongoing chaos, Batman to Ben, abort. We need you here. Superman, status on the weapon. Heavy resistance. We can't reach it. But Ben had made his decision. If the dimensional weapon activated, he'd lose everything, his home, his family, any chance of return. He pushed Jet Ray to its absolute limits, the landscape below blurring into incomprehensibility as he accelerated toward Metropolis. "Ben, what are you doing?" Cyborg demanded over the comm, improvising. Ben replied. "What's the weapon's exact position?" "Hovering above the Daily Planet building," Cyborg answered. "But listen, our analysis shows the weapon's core is protected by multiple energy fields. You can't just smash it." "Wasn't planning to," Ben said grimly, Metropolis appearing on the horizon. "I've got something better in mind." The city came into view, smoke rising from multiple locations where Superman and Wonder Woman were engaged with Apokoliptian forces. Above the iconic Daily Planet globe, the massive dimensional destabilizer hung in the air, energy building visibly around its core. As Ben approached, he could see Superman attempting to reach the weapon, only to be driven back by concentrated energy blasts from defensive turrets built into its surface. Wonder Woman was locked in combat with what appeared to be Bernadette herself, the leader of the female Furies, matching the Amazon blow for blow. "I need 10 seconds with that weapon," Ben announced over the comm. "What's your plan?" Superman called back, dodging another barrage from the weapon's defenses. "Remember how the Omnitrix works?" Ben replied, circling the weapon at high speed, assessing its defenses. "It samples and adapts DNA. Well, it can do the same with certain technologies." Understanding dawned in Cyborg's voice. "You're going to transform into an alien that can interface with the weapon." "Bingo." Ben confirmed. "I just need clear access to the main control node." Superman immediately changed tactics, focusing his heat vision on the weapon's primary defensive turrets. Wonder Woman. "The boy needs an opening." The Amazon princess disengaged from Bernadette long enough to hurl her lasso, ensnaring one of the secondary defense arrays and ripping it free from the weapon's surface. "Now, Ben Tennyson," she called out. "You have your opening." Ben didn't hesitate. He streaked toward the gap in the defenses, transforming mid-flight. Upgrade. His body morphed into a black, technological alien with green circuit patterns and a single eye. The moment he made contact with the dimensional destabilizer, his liquid metal form began spreading across its surface, integrating with its systems. "Whoa!" Ben exclaimed as his consciousness merged with the weapon's technologies. "This is complicated. What's happening?" Superman demanded, hovering nearby and fending off parademons that were attempting to dislodge Ben from the weapon. "I'm inside its systems," Ben replied, his voice emanating from the weapon itself as green circuit patterns spread across its previously dark surface. "Apokoliptian tech, mixed with, yes. The stolen Phantom Zone research. Can you disable it?" Wonder Woman asked, rejoining the battle after momentarily losing Bernadette in the chaos. "Better than that," Ben replied. "I can reverse it." His upgrade form pulsed with energy as he rewrote the weapon's core programming, redirecting its dimensional targeting capabilities. The massive device began to transform under his influence, its structure reconfiguring into something new. "Ben, multiple boom tubes opening." Cyborg warned. "Massive energy signature approaching." The sky above Metropolis tore open once more, and this time there was no mistaking the figure that emerged. Darkseid, in all his terrible glory, stepped through the interdimensional portal, his eyes fixed on the weapon that now pulsed with green energy patterns. "The shapeshifter attempts to usurp my technology," Darkseid observed, his voice carrying across the battlefield. "Futile." His eyes flared with crimson energy, Omega beams lancing toward the weapon, and by extension, toward Ben. Superman intercepted the beams with his own body, crying out in pain but refusing to yield. "Hurry, Ben," he called through gritted teeth. "I can't block him for long." Inside the weapon, Ben was working frantically. "Almost, got it." The dimensional destabilizer's energy core shifted from ominous red to vibrant green as Ben completed the reprogramming. The weapon hummed with new purpose, its barrels rotating to point not at empty space, but directly at Darkseid himself. "What is this?" the new god demanded, genuine confusion crossing his stony features. "A little trick I like to call, return to sender," Ben replied, his voice booming from the weapon. "You wanted to cut off dimensions. Let's see how you like being cut off instead." The weapon fired, but instead of the destructive beam Darkseid had intended, it released a concentrated pulse of green energy that engulfed the new god in a dimensional field. Darkseid roared in fury, attempting to break free, but the field contracted rapidly, confining him in what appeared to be a pocket dimension. "What have you done?" Darkseid demanded, his voice distorted as the field continued to contract. "Created a localized dimensional bubble," Ben explained, still merged with the weapon. "Specially calibrated to new god energy signatures. You're not being destroyed, just temporarily relocated to a pocket dimension where you can't hurt anyone." Darkseid's expression contorted with rage as the field collapsed to a singularity, then vanished entirely, taking the Lord of Apokolips with it. The battlefield fell silent. Bernadette and the remaining Apocalyptian forces stared in shock at the space where their master had been. Then, without a word, Bernadette opened a boom tube and retreated, her forces following quickly behind. Ben detached from the now dormant weapon, reverting to human form as he dropped to a nearby rooftop. Superman and Wonder Woman landed beside him, both looking battle-worn but victorious. "That," Superman said with genuine admiration, "was impressive. Is Darkseid truly defeated?" Wonder Woman asked, more pragmatic. Ben shook his head. "Not permanently. The pocket dimension will only hold him for maybe a day before it collapses. But it gives us time." "Time for what?" Superman asked. Ben grinned. "Time to get me home before he comes back really angry." "The dimensional scanner is fully operational," Cyborg reported, making final adjustments to the massive device that now dominated the Watchtower's main bay. "Ben's home universe has been located and locked in." 24 hours after Darkseid's temporary banishment, the Justice League had assembled to bid farewell to their interdimensional visitor. The threat was not permanently resolved. Darkseid would eventually escape the pocket dimension, but with the dimensional destabilizer dismantled and the Phantom Zone research secured, the immediate danger had passed. "How long will the portal remain stable?" Batman asked, ever focused on practical details. "Approximately 60 seconds, Cyborg answered. "More than enough time for a single traveler." Ben stood before the assembled heroes, the Omnitrix fully charged on his wrist. The adventures of the past week had been beyond anything he could have imagined, even with his extensive experience as a hero. "I don't know how to thank you all," he said, looking around at the legendary figures who had become allies and friends. "In my world, you're characters in comics and movies. Meeting you in person has been totally crash." Flash suggested with a grin. "Something like that," Ben laughed. "Though we definitely need to work on your slang." Superman stepped forward, extending his hand. "The Justice League is proud to have fought alongside you, Ben Tennyson. Your courage and resourcefulness would make you worthy of membership, were you to stay." Ben shook the offered hand, still slightly awed. "That means a lot, coming from you." "Your device," Batman said, nodding toward the Omnitrix, "remains one of the most powerful technologies we've encountered. Use it wisely." "Always do," Ben assured him. "Well, mostly." Wonder Woman approached next, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You fought with the heart of a true warrior. Your family should be proud." "They are," Ben said with a smile. "Though explaining where I've been might be tricky." "Sorry I'm late, Grandpa Max, I was busy fighting Darkseid with the Justice League in another dimension." "Speaking of which," Cyborg interrupted, "the portal is ready to activate. Energy readings suggest Darkseid's dimensional prison will collapse within hours." Ben nodded, understanding the urgency. As amazing as this adventure had been, he needed to get home before Darkseid returned seeking vengeance. "One last thing," he said, activating the Omnitrix. A parting gift, in case Darkseid causes trouble again. He cycled through the alien forms until he found what he was looking for, then removed a small data crystal from the Watchtower console. Placing it against the Omnitrix, he pressed a sequence of controls that caused both to glow briefly. "What are you doing?" Cyborg asked curiously. "Sharing data," Ben explained. "Technical specifications on the Omega transformation. If Darkseid returns, you'll have insights on new god physiology that might help." Batman accepted the crystal with a nod of acknowledgement. "Useful." "That's me," Ben grinned. "Mr. Useful." Cyborg moved to the scanner controls. Portal activating in 3, 2, 1. A swirling vortex of energy opened in the center of the bay, glowing with the same green hue as the Omnitrix. Through it, Ben could see the familiar streets of Bellwood, exactly where he'd left, the middle of a battle with the Tetraman fugitive. "That's my cue," Ben said, approaching the portal. He turned for one last look at the assembled heroes. "It's been an honor." "The honor was ours," Superman replied. "Perhaps our universes will cross paths again someday," Martian Manhunter suggested. Ben smiled. "I hope so. But preferably with less Darkseid next time." With a final wave, he stepped into the portal. The green energy surrounded him, and he felt the now familiar sensation of dimensional travel, the stretching, compressing, impossible physics of moving between universes. Then, suddenly, he was back in Bellwood, the Tetraman fugitive frozen in surprise at his sudden reappearance. "Ben!" Gwen's voice called out from nearby. "Where did you go? You just vanished." "You wouldn't believe me if I told you," Ben replied with a grin, activating the Omnitrix. "But first, let's wrap up this fight." Going hero. As he transformed to face the Tetraman, Ben couldn't help but wonder if Darkseid would find a way to pursue him across dimensions. The new god wasn't one to forgive or forget, and the Omnitrix remained a prize he coveted. But that was a problem for another day. Right now, he was home, with his family, doing what he did best, being a hero. And if Darkseid ever did find his way to Ben's universe, well, Ben Tennyson would be ready. After all, he'd learn from the best. Chapter 3, Apokolips. Now 6 weeks had passed since Ben Tennyson's return to his own universe, and life had settled back into what passed for normal when you're a teenager with an alien device strapped to your wrist. School, smoothies, and the occasional alien threat, the usual routine. "I still don't believe you actually met Superman," Gwen said as they walked home from school, the afternoon sun warm on their backs. "Or Batman. Or Wonder Woman." "For the 100th time, yes I did." Ben insisted, gesturing with his smoothie cup. "We fought Darkseid together. I helped save Metropolis. Superman literally told me I'd make a good Justice League member." Kevin Levin, walking alongside them, snorted. "Right. And I'm secretly the Flash's cousin." "You guys are impossible," Ben groaned. "I showed you the new Omega transformation. Where do you think that came from?" "Could have been any alien that looks like a rock dude," Kevin shrugged. "The Omnitrix picks up new DNA all the time." Ben was about to launch into another defense of his interdimensional adventure when the Omnitrix suddenly began to pulse with an unusual energy signature, not the familiar green glow, but a shifting pattern that alternated between green and blue. That's new," he said, stopping to examine the device. Gwen's eyes narrowed, her anodite senses tingling. "I feel something strange. Like a dimensional disturbance." "See? Proof!" Ben exclaimed triumphantly. "The Omnitrix is picking up something from the DC universe." Kevin rolled his eyes. "Or it's just another malfunction. That thing breaks more often than my first car." The pulsing intensified, and the Omnitrix began projecting what appeared to be a holographic message, fragmented and distorted, but gradually resolving into a recognizable face. "Batman?" Ben gasped as the cowled visage flickered into view. "Ben, Nyson." The distorted message crackled. Emergency. Justice League, compromised. Darkseid has, the Watchtower. Gwen and Kevin stared in shock as the hologram stabilized enough to show Batman's grim expression, now clearly visible despite the occasional static. Your Omega transformation created a quantum link between our universes, Batman continued, each word fighting through interference. Darkseid has captured Superman, Wonder Woman, others. Planning something, with Omnitrix technology. Must come, coordinates follow. A series of mathematical equations appeared alongside the hologram, dimensional coordinates, Ben realized. Is this for real? Kevin asked, his skepticism evaporating as the message continued. Bring the Omnitrix, may be our only, hurry, Tennyson. Batman, out. The hologram flickered and died, leaving the three teenagers standing in stunned silence on the suburban sidewalk. Okay, Kevin finally said. I believe you now. Ben was already activating the Omnitrix, cycling through alien forms with urgent purpose. I have to go back. They need help. Hold on. Gwen grabbed his arm. You can't just jump into another universe alone. We don't even know if those coordinates are legitimate, or if you can find your way back again. Batman wouldn't contact me unless it was serious, Ben argued. You heard him, the Justice League is compromised. Darkseid has Superman, Wonder Woman, and who knows how many others. And he'll have you too if you rush in without a plan, Gwen countered. We need Paradox or Azimuth. Someone who understands cross-dimensional travel. Ben shook his head. There's no time. Batman wouldn't have risked contact unless it was urgent. He looked down at the Omnitrix. Besides, I've got something they don't, a new god transformation that Darkseid doesn't expect me to use again. Kevin crossed his arms. And how exactly are you planning to cross dimensions? The Omnitrix isn't a cosmic Uber service. Actually, Ben said, a plan forming, I think it can be. When I was there, the Omnitrix didn't just sample Darkseid's DNA, it created a quantum link between our universes. That's how Batman was able to contact me. If I transform into Omega and focus on those coordinates. You might be able to create a boom tube, Gwen finished, her eyes widening. But Ben, that's incredibly dangerous. The energy requirements alone could drain the Omnitrix completely. I have to try, Ben insisted. These people saved my life, helped me get home. I can't abandon them. Kevin and Gwen exchanged a look, having one of those silent conversations that close friends develop. Fine, Kevin finally said. But we're coming with you. No way, Ben shook his head firmly. This isn't your fight. It became our fight the moment that message came through, Gwen countered. We're a team, remember? Plus, you might need my magic to get back home. And my charming personality, Kevin added with a smirk. Ben looked between his cousin and his friend, knowing they wouldn't take no for an answer. And truthfully, he was glad for their support. Facing Darkseid once had been terrifying enough. Doing it on the new god's home turf would be another level entirely. All right, he conceded. But we do this carefully. I transform into Omega, try to create a boom tube to the coordinates Batman sent. We assess the situation before charging in. If it's too dangerous, we retreat and try to find Paradox. Deal, Gwen nodded. Let's do this somewhere less public, Kevin suggested, gesturing to the curious neighbors beginning to peer out of windows at the three teenagers having an animated discussion in the middle of the sidewalk. They made their way to a nearby park, finding a secluded clearing surrounded by trees. As Kevin and Gwen stood ready, Ben activated the Omnitrix, cycling through until he found the Omega form. Going hero, he called out, slapping down on the device. The transformation was as intense as he remembered. Green energy cascaded around him as his body morphed into the stone-like form of a new god, power coursing through every cell. When the light faded, Ben stood in his Omega form, the Omnitrix symbol prominent on his chest. Whoa, Kevin whistled, looking up at the imposing figure Ben had become. That's definitely new. And powerful, Gwen added, her eyes glowing slightly as she sensed the cosmic energy radiating from the transformation. I can feel it from here. Ben nodded, his voice resonating with the same depth as Darkseid's. This form taps into the source, the fundamental energy that powers the new gods. I think I can use it to create a boom tube. He raised his hands, concentrating on the dimensional coordinates Batman had sent. Green energy gathered between his palms, swirling and condensing as he focused his will on creating a passage between universes. The air before them began to distort and tear. It's working! Gwen exclaimed. Ben grunted with effort, sweat beading on his stone-like brow. This is harder than it looks. Batman's coordinates are encrypted somehow. Let me help, Gwen stepped forward, her hands glowing with mana. I can sense the pattern. She placed her hands near the forming portal, her energy intertwining with Ben's. The swirling distortion stabilized, expanding into a recognizable boom tube, but with a distinctive green and pink energy signature that reflected their combined powers. That's our ride, Ben said, lowering his hands. Once we're through, stay close. If what Batman said is true, we're headed into a war zone. Kevin touched a nearby rock, absorbing its properties until his body was covered in protective stone. Ready when you are. The three exchanged determined nods, then stepped into the swirling portal. The sensation of interdimensional travel washed over them, the stretching, compressing feeling that Ben remembered from his previous journey. Gwen created a mana shield around them, stabilizing their passage through the quantum currents. When the disorientation cleared, they found themselves not in the gleaming corridors of the Watchtower as expected, but in a dark, ruined landscape under a blood-red sky. The air itself seemed to burn with each breath, sulfur and ash filling their lungs. This isn't the Watchtower, Kevin observed unnecessarily, looking around at the desolate terrain. No, Ben agreed, his Omega form's cosmic awareness immediately recognizing their location. It's Apokolips. Darkseid's homeworld. Gwen created a bubble of mana around them, filtering the toxic air. Batman's coordinates led us here. Why would he? Because he's here too, Ben realized. The Watchtower wasn't compromised, it was destroyed. The League was captured and brought to Apokolips. As they took in their surroundings, the true horror of Apokolips became apparent. In the distance, massive fire pits belched flames and smoke into the perpetually dark sky. Towering structures of black metal and stone rose like jagged teeth from the ruined landscape. And everywhere, the sounds of suffering, distant cries and mechanical grinding that formed a constant, discordant backdrop. Cheerful place, Kevin muttered. Remind me to complain to the travel agent. We need to find Batman, Ben said, his Omega form scanning the environment. He must have sent those coordinates from somewhere nearby. Gwen closed her eyes, concentrating. I can sense something. A faint energy signature that doesn't belong here. It feels human, but... Her eyes snapped open. It's moving away from us, fast. Then we follow, Ben decided. Which direction? Gwen pointed toward a looming structure about a mile away, a fortress of impossible architecture, with gravity-defying spires and angles that hurt the eyes to look at directly. There. Whatever I'm sensing is being taken inside. Ben nodded. Then that's where we're going. But we need stealth. He tapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest, transforming in a flash of green light. Big chill. His body morphed into the familiar moth-like alien with intangibility powers. I'll scout ahead, invisible. You two follow, but stay hidden. Got it, Kevin agreed, his stone form already blending surprisingly well with the rocky terrain. Just don't get caught. Something tells me the local hospitality sucks. Ben turned invisible and flew toward the fortress, the burning air of Apokolips passing harmlessly through his intangible form. As he approached, the true scale of the structure became apparent, it was massive, easily dwarfing the tallest skyscrapers on Earth. Parademons patrolled the perimeter, their wings creating a constant buzz as they circled like insects around a hive. Finding an entry point wasn't difficult, becoming intangible meant walls were merely suggestions. Ben passed through the outer defenses without resistance, emerging into cavernous corridors lined with strange technology and arcane symbols. The interior was surprisingly orderly, with clear purpose to its design despite the alien aesthetics. He followed the main passage deeper into the fortress, eventually reaching what appeared to be a central chamber. Voices echoed from within, one unmistakably Darkseid's resonant bass, and another that sent a chill through Ben despite Big Chill's naturally cold physiology. The extraction proceeds as planned, Lord Darkseid, the second voice reported with oily deference. The Kryptonians' resistance was substantial, but ultimately futile. The Amazon likewise. And the detective? Darkseid inquired. Batman proved more difficult to contain. His last transmission was intercepted, but not before it was sent. To whom did he transmit? We are still analyzing the quantum signature, but preliminary data suggests an interdimensional target. There was a pause, and Ben could almost feel Darkseid's calculating mind working. The boy with the device. Tennyson. A logical conclusion, my lord. Then we must accelerate our timetable. The Kryptonian and Amazon DNA sequences are already integrated. Begin Phase 2 immediately. As you command, Lord Darkseid. Ben risked moving closer to the chamber entrance, remaining invisible but positioning himself to see inside. What he saw made his blood freeze. The chamber was a massive laboratory, filled with apocalyptic technology beyond human comprehension. In the center stood multiple containment units, transparent cells holding captured Justice League members. Superman and Wonder Woman were unconscious, suspended in some kind of energy field. Flash appeared to be in a time-dilated chamber, moving at imperceptible speed from an outside perspective. Others were similarly contained, each prison specifically designed to counter their abilities. And at the far end, strapped to an examination table surrounded by complex machinery, was Batman. Unlike the others, he was conscious, his exposed face showing signs of brutal interrogation. The cowl and utility belt were gone, but his defiant expression remained intact. Standing over him was a thin, sadistic-looking being that could only be Darkseid, Darkseid's chief torturer and scientist. He was operating controls that connected to a central device, a massive structure that contained swirling vials of various energies and substances. Commence integration sequence, Darkseid instructed his assistants. Prepare the Parademon template for genetic modification. Ben had seen enough. He needed to return to Gwen and Kevin, form a plan. As he turned to leave, his Omnitrix symbol suddenly flashed, a brief pulse of green that, while invisible to normal sight, created a quantum disturbance that sensitive apocalyptic technology could detect. An alarm immediately blared throughout the fortress. Intruder detected. Darkseid announced, frantically checking his instruments. Quantum signature matches the Omnitrix. Darkseid's eyes narrowed, scanning the chamber. The boy is here. Find him. Ben abandoned stealth for speed, turning tangible just long enough to fire a freezing blast at the nearest control panel, shorting it out in a shower of sparks. Then he shot upward, phasing through the ceiling as parademons flooded into the chamber below. Tennyson, Darkseid's voice boomed throughout the fortress. I know you are here. Your interference is futile. Apokolips is my domain, and you are alone. Ben raced through the fortress, passing through walls and floors as he made his way back toward where he'd left Gwen and Kevin. The alarm had triggered a fortress-wide response. Parademons and other apocalyptic forces were mobilizing everywhere. He emerged from the outer wall to find chaos outside. Gwen was maintaining a mana shield against Parademon attacks while Kevin, now covered in the metal he'd absorbed from a piece of apocalyptic technology, fought hand-to-hand with the winged creatures. Ben! Gwen called out as he became visible again. What's happening? The League is captured, Ben explained quickly. Darkseid's extracting their DNA for some kind of experiment. And they know we're here. No kidding, Kevin grunted, punching a parade mon hard enough to send it flying. These guys just started swarming us about a minute ago. Ben surveyed the situation. They were outnumbered hundreds to one, with more forces converging by the second. We need a new plan. This form isn't combat effective enough. He slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Humongosaur. The transformation changed him into the massive, dinosaur-like alien with tremendous strength. Ben immediately grew to his full 30-foot height, swatting parademons aside like flies. That's more like it, he roared, creating space around them. Gwen, can you teleport us out of here? Gwen shook her head, maintaining her shield. Not on Apokolips. The dimensional energies are too chaotic. We'd need a boom tube or something similar. Then we fight our way out, Ben decided. Find somewhere to regroup and plan a rescue. Kevin absorbed the properties of a downed parademon's armor, upgrading his protection. Which way? Ben pointed toward what appeared to be a less guarded area of the perimeter. There. I'll clear a path. He charged forward, each massive footstep shaking the ground. Parademons scattered before him, their weapons seemingly ineffective against his tough hide. Gwen and Kevin followed in his wake, the mana shield deflecting energy blasts from all sides. They had almost reached the perimeter when a massive boom tube opened directly in their path. From it emerged a contingent of elite warriors, the female Furies, led by Bernadette herself. The shapeshifter returns, Bernadette observed, her voice carrying over the chaos. With friends, no less. How touching. Ben skidded to a halt, positioning himself between the Furies and his friends. Stand aside. We're leaving. Bernadette's laugh was like steel scraping stone. No one leaves Apokolips without Lord Darkseid's permission. Especially not one who bears new god DNA. She raised her hand, and the Furies spread out in perfect formation, each a deadly warrior with powers that had challenged even Superman. I count 5 of them, Kevin muttered. And about 1,000 parademons still circling. Then it's a fair fight, Ben replied, cracking his massive knuckles. For them. He charged Bernadette directly, hoping to overwhelm her with sheer size and strength. The Fury leader didn't flinch, waiting until the last possible moment before sidestepping with inhuman grace. As Ben passed, she struck with her weapon, a glowing knife that burned with apocalyptic energy. Pain seared through Ben's side as the blade cut through even his tough hide. He roared and swung back, his massive fist catching only air as Bernadette moved with practiced ease. Predictable, she taunted. Lord Darkseid has studied your transformations extensively. We know all their weaknesses. Meanwhile, Gwen was engaged with a Fury wielding energy whips, her mana shields barely holding against the specialized weapons. Kevin found himself facing 2 Furies at once, his absorbed armor cracking under their coordinated strikes. Ben! Gwen called out, her voice strained. We can't win this fight. She was right. They were outmatched, outgunned, and in enemy territory. Even Ben's strongest transformations might not be enough against warriors specifically trained to counter them. New plan, Ben decided, slapping the Omnitrix symbol again. Echo, echo. His form changed to a small, white alien with sound-based powers. Immediately, he multiplied into dozens of identical copies, surrounding his friends in a protective formation. Wall of sound, the Echo Echoes shouted in unison, unleashing a devastating sonic attack in all directions. The concentrated sound waves created a momentary disruption, staggering even the Furies with its intensity. Run, the Prime Echo Echo commanded, continuing the sonic barrage while Gwen and Kevin retreated. They fought their way through the disoriented parademons, eventually reaching a network of maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the main fortress. Once inside, Ben reverted to human form, conserving the Omnitrix's energy. That was close, Kevin panted, his armor cracked and partially disintegrated. Those Fury ladies don't mess around. They were ready for us, Ben noted grimly. Darkseid studied my aliens, prepared countermeasures. Gwen created a small mana light, illuminating their surroundings, narrow, twisted tunnels that seemed to extend indefinitely in all directions. At least we're out of sight for now. But we still need a plan to rescue the Justice League. Ben nodded, his expression serious. I saw them in that central chamber. They're being held in specialized containment units. Darkseid is extracting their DNA for some kind of experiment. Extracting their DNA? Kevin repeated. What for? I'm not sure, but I heard something about Parademon templates and genetic modification, Ben replied. I think he's trying to create some kind of super parademons with the League's powers. That would be bad, Gwen understated. And it gets worse, Ben continued. He specifically mentioned accelerating the timetable because of us. Whatever he's planning, our arrival just put it on the fast track. Kevin leaned against the tunnel wall, wincing as his absorbed armor finally disintegrated completely. So we're outgunned, on his turf, and now we've made things worse. Great start to the rescue mission. We need help, Gwen concluded. Are there any resistance forces on Apokolips? Anyone who opposes Darkseid? Ben thought back to what he knew about the DC universe. There's New Genesis, the opposing world to Apokolips. They're basically the good version of New Gods. And I think there's an underground resistance here called the Hunger Dogs. Great, Kevin said. So we just need to find the local rebellion that probably doesn't trust outsiders, convince them to help us, and then break into the most secure fortress on a hellworld to rescue Earth's greatest heroes from the most powerful being in the universe. Should be easy. When you put it that way. Ben began, but was interrupted by a sound from deeper in the tunnels, footsteps approaching. They tensed, ready for another fight. Ben reached for the Omnitrix, but hesitated when a single figure emerged from the shadows, a young woman with features that marked her as not entirely human, wearing tattered clothes and carrying what looked like a makeshift weapon. You seek to oppose Darkseid, she stated rather than asked, her voice carrying an accent Ben couldn't place. That makes us potential allies. And you are? Gwen asked cautiously, mana still glowing around her hands. My name is Barda, the woman replied. Once I was trained to be a Fury. Now I fight against the one who calls himself my master. Big Barda? Ben blurted out, recognizing the name from comics. You're with the New Gods. Barda's eyes narrowed. You know of me? How? It's complicated, Ben replied quickly. But if you're against Darkseid, we definitely need to talk. Barda studied them for a moment, then nodded. Follow me. Quickly. The tunnel sensors will detect you soon. She turned and moved deeper into the labyrinth, her steps sure and silent despite her size. She stood at least 7 feet tall, Ben realized, her powerful frame marking her as a formidable warrior. They followed, having little choice but to trust this unexpected ally. Barda led them through a dizzying series of turns and hidden passages until they reached what appeared to be a dead end. She pressed her hand against a section of wall, which reconfigured at her touch, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. Inside, a small group of figures huddled around what appeared to be communication equipment and weapons. They looked up sharply as Barda entered with the strangers. Outsiders, one hissed, reaching for a weapon. Allies, Barda corrected firmly. They oppose Darkseid, as do we. The chamber was Spartan but functional, clearly a resistance outpost of some kind. Maps of the fortress were projected on one wall, while another displayed what appeared to be security feeds from various locations around Apokolips. This is the resistance? Kevin asked, looking unimpressed at the small group. One cell of many, Barda replied. We operate independently to avoid detection. Ben stepped forward. We came to rescue the Justice League. Darkseid is holding them in the central laboratory complex. The resistance members exchanged glances. "We know," one confirmed. Their capture was broadcast across Apokolips as a demonstration of Darkseid's power. Even Superman fell before him. "We've been monitoring the situation," Barda added, gesturing to the security feeds. "Darkseid has accelerated a project he calls Evolution. Using DNA extracted from the Earth heroes, he plans to create a new generation of parademons with metahuman abilities." "That's what I overheard," Ben confirmed. "But why? Parademons are already pretty tough." Barda's expression darkened. "Because of you, Ben Tennyson." Ben blinked in surprise. "You know who I am." "Darkseid speaks of little else," Barda said grimly. "Your device, the Omnitrix, demonstrated capabilities that obsess him. The ability to transform at will, to adapt any genetic template, he seeks to replicate it on a massive scale." "But the Omnitrix doesn't work that way," Ben protested. "It doesn't change others, only the user. Darkseid cares not for its original purpose," Barda replied. "He has studied the energy signature it emits, the way it reconfigures DNA. With the Justice League's genetic material and what he has learned from your previous encounter, he believes he can create parademons that can transform between different metapowered states." The implications were horrifying. An army of parademons that could switch between Superman's strength, Flash's speed, Wonder Woman's abilities. "We have to stop him," Ben said firmly. "Now. Before this evolution project goes any further." Barda nodded in agreement. "My thoughts exactly. But the central laboratory is the most secure location in the fortress. Even with your powers, a direct assault would fail." "Then we need something indirect," Gwen suggested. "A way to get inside undetected." One of the resistance members spoke up. "The waste reclamation system passes beneath the laboratory. Maintenance drones use it to access the lower levels." "Could we fit through that?" Kevin asked skeptically. "You couldn't," Barda confirmed. "But perhaps one of Ben's smaller transformations could." Ben was already cycling through the Omnitrix. "Gray matter would be perfect for this. Small enough to move undetected, smart enough to sabotage whatever Darkseid is building." "I could create a diversion," Gwen offered. "Something to draw attention away from the laboratory." "And I'll go with Barda to find Batman," Kevin added. He seemed to be held separately from the others. "If anyone can help us coordinate a full rescue, it's him." Barda looked impressed despite herself. "You plan well for outsiders. But timing is critical. Darkseid will complete the first phase of integration within hours. Then we move now," Ben decided. "Show me how to access this waste system, and I'll handle the sabotage." Barda activated a more detailed holographic map. "Here. This access point is minimally guarded. Once inside, follow this path to the central laboratory's understructure. The primary genetic sequencers will be here." She pointed to a specific location. "Disable them, and the entire project is delayed." "Got it," Ben nodded, studying the map carefully. "Gwen, your diversion needs to be big enough to draw significant forces, but not so obvious that it looks like a diversion." "I'm thinking the fire pits," Gwen suggested. "If I disrupt one with enough mana, it should trigger automatic responses without endangering anyone." "The southernmost pit would be ideal," Barda agreed. "It powers the fortress's secondary systems. A disruption there would demand immediate attention without compromising the laboratory directly." Kevin absorbed the properties of a metal component from nearby equipment. "How do we find Batman?" "Prisoner processing first," Barda replied. "All captives pass through there before specialized containment. Records will indicate his location." Ben looked around at their unlikely team, his cousin, his friend, a rebel new god, and himself. Not exactly the Justice League, but they were the only hope for Earth's greatest heroes now. "Let's do this," he said, activating the Omnitrix. "Going hero." He slammed down on the device, transforming in a flash of green light into the tiny, frog-like alien with enhanced intelligence. Gray matter. Impressive, Barda observed. Even smaller than the schematics indicated. Ben's gray matter form blinked up at her. You've seen schematics of my transformations? Darkseid has extensively documented your capabilities based on your previous encounter, Barda confirmed. Fortunately, I have access to that documentation. That was concerning, but there was no time to worry about it now. They moved to implement their plan, synchronizing communication devices provided by the Resistance. Gwen departed first, Barda guiding her toward the fire pits. Kevin and Barda would move next, using the eventual chaos as cover to infiltrate the prisoner processing center. Ben, in his gray matter form, was escorted to a maintenance hatch by one of the Resistance members. The opening was tiny, barely large enough for a small rodent, let alone a human, but perfectly sized for his current transformation. Remember, the internal security system scanned for organic life larger than native vermin, his guide warned. Stay in that form until you reach the laboratory. Got it, Ben nodded, his large gray matter eyes blinking solemnly. And thanks. For helping us. The Resistance member offered a grim smile. Anyone who opposes Darkseid is a friend. Good luck. Ben squeezed through the hatch, finding himself in a narrow conduit filled with unidentifiable fluids and mechanical components. His gray matter form was perfectly adapted to this environment, small enough to avoid detection, dexterous enough to navigate the complex machinery, and intelligent enough to understand the alien technology surrounding him. He moved quickly through the waste system, following the mental map he'd memorized. The enhanced intelligence of this form was a double-edged sword. He understood the horrifying nature of Apokolips more completely now, perceiving the intricate systems of oppression and suffering that Darkseid had engineered. This wasn't just a cruel world, it was a carefully designed machine for pain and domination. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, Ben reached the understructure of the central laboratory. Through small vents and gaps in the machinery, he could see the massive chamber above, Darkseid still working at the controls, Parademon standing guard, and the Justice League members still contained in their specialized prisons. I'm in position, he whispered into his communicator. Waiting for the diversion. Ready here, Gwen's voice replied, sounding tense but determined. Moving to prisoner processing, Kevin added. Barda says 2 minutes until optimal timing. Ben used the wait to study the laboratory's systems from below. The genetic sequencers Barda had mentioned were easy to identify, massive, pulsing machines that hummed with energy. Connected to them were vials of what could only be extracted DNA from the Justice League members, glowing with distinct colors, a bright red that must be Superman's, a golden yellow likely from Wonder Woman, a crackling lightning pattern that had to be Flash's. Most disturbing was a central vial containing a swirling green energy that looked disturbingly similar to the Omnitrix's signature. Somehow, Darkseid had managed to synthesize or replicate aspects of the device's energy pattern. Commencing diversion now, Gwen's voice came through the communicator, interrupting Ben's observations. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the fortress. Darkseid looked up in irritation, checking a nearby monitor. Fire pit disturbance, he reported to someone off Ben's limited view. Security protocols activated. A deep, resonant voice replied, Darkseid. A diversion, most likely. The Tennyson boy would not come alone. Should we pause the integration process? Darkseid inquired. No. Accelerate it. Phase 1 must be completed before further interference. Send secondary forces to investigate the disturbance. Ben heard the heavy footsteps as Darkseid moved across the laboratory, coming into view near the containment units. The new god studied Superman's unconscious form with something like satisfaction. Soon, Kal-El, your power will serve Apokolips. A fitting end for the last Kryptonian. That was all Ben needed to hear. As Parademons rushed to respond to the fire pit disturbance, he squeezed through a ventilation gap and emerged underneath the central console. From here, He had direct access to the genetic sequencer's primary control circuits. Gray Matter's tiny hands moved with precision, disconnecting key components and rerouting others. The alien intelligence guided him through the complex apocalyptian technology, not to destroy it outright, which would be detected immediately, but to sabotage it subtly. He introduced cascading errors into the genetic algorithms, reversed polarity on critical power couplings, and reprogrammed identification markers to reject rather than accept the Justice League DNA. Prisoner processing infiltrated, Kevin's voice came through the communicator, barely audible over the continuing alarms. Batman's location confirmed. Sublevel detention block. Is he alive? Ben whispered back as he continued his sabotage. Affirmative. Barda says he's being kept separate because he nearly escaped twice already. That sounded like Batman. Ben allowed himself a moment of relief before returning to his task. The sabotage was nearly complete, just one more critical system to compromise. He reached for the final coupling, the one connected to the Omnitrix-like energy, when a sudden silence fell over the laboratory. The alarms cut out abruptly, replaced by an even more ominous quiet. The disturbance is contained, Darkseid reported. Security forces report capturing a female metahuman at the fire pit. Ben's blood ran cold. Gwen, captured. Bring her here, Darkseid ordered. Her DNA may prove useful as well. And the others? Darkseid inquired. They will be found. Apokolips has no shadows deep enough to hide them. Darkseid turned toward the genetic sequencers, his eyes narrowing suddenly. Run a full diagnostic on the integration systems. Darkseid looked surprised. My lord. Now, Darkseid commanded, his gaze fixed on the machinery with suspicious intensity. Ben froze beneath the console. Had he been detected? He needed to complete the sabotage, but movement now might give him away. Darkseid hurried to comply, activating diagnostic protocols on the main console directly above Ben's hiding place. Running full system scan, my lord. Darkseid moved closer to the machinery, his heavy footsteps vibrating through the floor. The Tennyson boy possesses a transformation with enhanced intelligence. Small enough to infiltrate, smart enough to sabotage. Ben's heart raced. Somehow, Darkseid had anticipated this exact approach. He needed to finish the sabotage now, before the diagnostic revealed his tampering. With no choice left, he reached for the final coupling and yanked it free, simultaneously crossing critical wires to trigger a system overload. The effect was immediate, sparks erupted from the genetic sequencers, and warning lights flashed across the console. Sabotage detected. Darkseid cried out. Primary integration matrix compromised. As I suspected, Darkseid said, his voice ominously calm. He reached down with impossible speed, his massive hand closing around the console base and tearing it free from the floor, exposing Ben completely. The Galvan form, Darkseid observed, red eyes fixing on Ben's tiny figure. Intelligent choice. But predictable. Ben backed away, frantically searching for an escape route. Your evolution project is finished, Darkseid. I've made sure of that. You've merely delayed the inevitable, Darkseid replied, reaching for him with inexorable purpose. Ben slapped the Omnitrix symbol on his back, transforming in a flash of green light. Fast track. His body morphed into a sleek, feline-like alien built for speed. The moment the transformation completed, he took off, moving so quickly that even Darkseid appeared to be standing still. He raced around the laboratory, searching for a way to free the Justice League members. But their containment units were designed to withstand even Superman's strength. Ben couldn't break them open, not in this form, perhaps not in any form. Ben to team, he said into his communicator as he continued to race around the chamber. Cover blown. Gwen captured. Primary objective accomplished, genetic sequencers sabotaged, but I need extraction. Working on it, Kevin's voice replied, sounding strained. Batman secured. Heading to your position. Barda says there's a maintenance shaft that connects to the laboratory from sublevel 3. Kind of busy right now. Ben replied, narrowly avoiding an Omega beam that Darkseid fired with uncanny precision despite Ben's speed. The destructive energy followed him like a homing missile, forcing him to run in increasingly complex patterns. Parademons, secure the laboratory. Darkseid commanded. The shapeshifter must not escape. Ben spotted the maintenance shaft Kevin had mentioned, a small access panel near the floor on the far side of the chamber. He accelerated toward it, but Darkseid anticipated his move. The new god slammed his fist into the floor, creating a shockwave that momentarily disrupted Ben's footing. It was enough. The Omega beam caught him squarely in the back, sending excruciating pain through his entire body. Ben tumbled to a stop, the Omnitrix flickering erratically on his chest. Your interference ends now, Darkseid declared, approaching the downed hero. The device will be mine, as it was always meant to be. Ben struggled to his feet, the Omnitrix still unstable from the Omega beam's impact. Not happening, he managed, slapping the symbol despite its erratic flashing. The transformation was unexpected, not one Ben had called for, but perhaps exactly what he needed. His body expanded and shifted into a massive, crystalline alien. Diamond Head, he announced, immediately creating a crystal shield between himself and Darkseid. The new god's Omega beam struck the shield, their energy refracting through the crystalline structure. Ben used the momentary protection to assess his situation. Parademons were surrounding him, Darkseid was frantically trying to salvage the damaged genetic sequencers, and Darkseid himself was preparing for another attack. Ben, a new voice called from the maintenance shaft. Kevin emerged, his body covered in what appeared to be apocalyptic armor. Behind him came Barda and, to Ben's immense relief, Batman himself, looking battered but fully alert, cowl and utility belt somehow restored. About time. Ben called back, reinforcing his crystal shield as Darkseid struck it with a physical blow that created cracks throughout the structure. The others? Batman demanded, immediately assessing the situation. Still contained, Ben replied, gesturing to the specialized prisons around the laboratory. I couldn't break them out. Batman nodded once, then turned to Barda. The control nexus? There, she pointed to a secondary console that Darkseid was now protecting, surrounded by parademons. Cover me, Batman ordered, then seemed to vanish into the shadows despite the laboratory's bright lighting. Kevin charged into the fray, his absorbed apocalyptic armor allowing him to engage the parademons directly. Barda produced what appeared to be a specialized weapon, a megarod, Ben recalled from comics, and joined the battle, her warrior training evident in every precise movement. Ben faced Darkseid directly, reforming his crystal shield into offensive weapons. Just you and me again, rock face. Your defiance is admirable, Darkseid acknowledged. But futile. Even your crystalline form cannot withstand the Omega effect indefinitely. To demonstrate, he unleashed another blast of Omega beams, more powerful than before. Ben created a series of crystal reflectors, redirecting the destructive energy around the laboratory and, he hoped, away from his friends. Through the chaos, Ben caught glimpses of Batman moving with impossible stealth, systematically approaching the control nexus. Somehow, despite being surrounded by parademons, the Dark Knight remained undetected, slipping from shadow to shadow. Ben, Batman's voice came through the communicator, barely audible over the battle. When I give the signal, transform into your Omega form. Be ready. Copy that, Ben acknowledged, continuing his crystal barrage against Darkseid. Shards of diamond-hard material bounced harmlessly off the new god's stone-like skin. Across the chamber, Ben saw Kevin free Gwen from a group of parademons that had just brought her in. His cousin looked dazed but conscious, her hands immediately glowing with mana as she rejoined the fight. Now, Ben. Batman's voice commanded. Ben slapped the Omnitrix symbol, transforming into Omega. The new god form manifested with a pulse of green energy that momentarily illuminated the entire laboratory. Darkseid paused, his expression showing genuine surprise. The new god transformation. You dare use my own genetic template against me? Here, on Apokolips? Not just use it, Ben replied, his voice carrying the same resonance as Darkseid's own. Improve it. Before Darkseid could respond, Batman activated something at the control nexus. The containment units holding the Justice League members suddenly powered down, their energy fields dissipating. Superman was the first to recover, his eyes snapping open as he processed the situation instantly. Without hesitation, he launched himself at Darkseid, connecting with a punch that actually drove the new god backward. Justice League. Superman called out. Form up. The other heroes were recovering with varying speeds, Wonder Woman shaking off her containment with warrior resilience, Flash vibrating free of his time-dilated prison, others joining the battle one by one. Ben, in his Omega form, moved to Superman's side. Thought you could use some help. Superman's expression showed momentary surprise at Ben's transformed state, but he nodded in acknowledgement. Your timing is impeccable. Darkseid rose from where Superman's punch had driven him, his eyes blazing with fury. You think this changes anything? You are on Apokolips. My world. My power is absolute here. Not anymore, Batman countered, appearing beside them with something clutched in his hand, a small, pulsing device. I've accessed your mother box network. The boom tubes are under our control now. Darkseid's expression shifted to one of cold calculation. Impressive, detective. But mother boxes are not so easily suborned. They are when you understand their true nature, Batman replied. They respond to intent as much as command. And right now, every mother box on Apokolips intends for us to leave, with you unable to follow. Ben could feel the shift in energy throughout the fortress, the fundamental technologies of Apokolips responding to Batman's reprogramming. It was an impossible feat, something that should have been beyond any human's capabilities. But then, Batman had always been more than just human. Fall back to extraction point, Batman ordered the assembled heroes. Barda knows the way. Darkseid's response was immediate and devastating. He slammed his fists together, creating a shockwave that staggered even Superman. None of you will leave Apokolips alive. Ben stepped forward, his Omega form radiating green energy. I'll hold him off. Get everyone to the extraction point. No, Superman countered. We stand together. The Justice League formed a defensive perimeter, Wonder Woman, Flash, Green Lantern, who had apparently been contained elsewhere in the fortress, and others creating a fighting retreat while Barda led them toward the extraction point Batman had designated. Ben and Superman stood as the rear guard, directly facing Darkseid's wrath. I'll take high, you take low. Ben suggested. Superman actually smiled slightly. Just like in Metropolis. They moved in perfect synchronization, Superman attacking with blinding speed and strength while Ben unleashed the cosmic powers of his Omega form. Green energy waves distorted space around Darkseid, momentarily limiting his movement while Superman delivered precisely targeted blows. For a moment, it seemed to be working. Darkseid staggered under their combined assault, unable to counter both simultaneously. Then he adapted, the full power of Apokolips seeming to flow through him as he called upon his home advantage. Enough! Darkseid roared, his voice shaking the very foundations of the fortress. He caught Superman's next punch in one massive hand, simultaneously firing Omega beams at Ben that bypassed his distortion field completely. The pain was excruciating, like being unmade at the atomic level. Ben fought to maintain his concentration, to keep his Omega form stable despite the attack. Superman, go. Get to the others. Not without you, Superman insisted, still struggling against Darkseid's grip. Ben made a split-second decision. He tapped into his Omega form's most dangerous ability, the power to create boom tubes, and focused it not outward but inward. Green energy swirled around him as he created a localized dimensional distortion. What are you doing? Darkseid demanded, sensing the energy buildup. Something really stupid, Ben admitted. Then he released the built-up energy in an omnidirectional pulse that engulfed himself, Superman, and Darkseid in a temporary pocket dimension, a space between spaces where Darkseid's connection to Apokolips was momentarily severed. The effort was enormous, threatening to overwhelm even the Omega form's capabilities. Ben felt the Omnitrix heating up on his chest, warning signals flashing across its interface. But it worked. Darkseid's connection to his world was temporarily cut off, reducing him from a god to merely an incredibly powerful being. Superman, freed from Darkseid's grip, immediately pressed the advantage. "Get to the others," Superman ordered Ben. "This pocket dimension won't hold for long." But Ben began to protest. "Go," Superman insisted, engaging Darkseid directly. "Complete the mission." Ben hesitated only a moment longer, then created a boom tube back to normal space, emerging near the extraction point where the Justice League had gathered. Batman stood at the center, the reprogrammed mother box in his hand, creating a massive boom tube back to Earth. "Superman?" Batman demanded as soon as Ben appeared. "Fighting Darkseid in a pocket dimension," Ben explained quickly. "But it's collapsing. We need to go now." Batman's expression remained impassive, but his hesitation spoke volumes. He wouldn't leave Superman behind. "I'll get him," Ben decided, already turning back. "The pocket dimension is breaking down," Batman warned. "You won't have much time." Ben nodded. "Just keep that boom tube open." He concentrated, creating another dimensional portal back to where he'd left Superman and Darkseid. The scene that greeted him was grim, Superman bloodied but unbowed, still fighting despite obviously severe injuries. Darkseid, sensing the dimensional barriers weakening, was growing stronger by the second. "Superman!" Ben called out. "Time to go." The Man of Steel disengaged just long enough to look at Ben. "The dimension is collapsing. Darkseid's reconnecting with Apokolips." "Then let's not be here when that happens," Ben replied, creating a direct boom tube to the extraction point. "Come on." Superman delivered one final blow to Darkseid, powerful enough to send the new god staggering, then flew to Ben's side. Together, they leapt through the boom tube, emerging among the waiting Justice League just as the pocket dimension collapsed entirely. "Now, Batman," Superman ordered. Batman activated the mother box, and the massive boom tube to Earth expanded, ready to transport them all home. As they moved toward it, a terrible roar of fury echoed throughout the fortress. Darkseid, fully reconnected to Apokolips, realizing his prey was escaping. "Go," Barda urged them. "I will hold him off." "You're coming with us," Ben insisted, grabbing her arm. "You can't stay here. Darkseid will destroy you for helping us." Barda hesitated, clearly torn. "Apokolips is my home, despite everything. The Resistance needs me." "Earth needs you too," Superman told her. "Come with us, Barda. Help us prepare for when Darkseid inevitably follows." That settled it. Barda nodded once, decisively, and joined the exodus through the boom tube. One by one, the Justice League members passed through, returning to Earth. Ben, still in his Omega form, was one of the last to enter, along with Gwen and Kevin. As they approached the portal, a massive explosion rocked the extraction point. Darkseid had arrived, his fury manifesting as pure destructive force. "You will not escape me, Tennyson," he roared, Omega beams lancing toward them. Ben reacted instinctively, creating a shield of green energy between Darkseid and the boom tube. "Go," he shouted to Gwen and Kevin. "I'm right behind you." His friends hesitated only briefly before diving through the portal. Ben maintained his shield against Darkseid's onslaught, feeling the Omnitrix growing dangerously hot against his chest. The transformation was becoming unstable, pushed beyond its limits by the extended use of such powerful abilities. With one final effort, Ben hurled a concentrated blast of green energy directly at Darkseid, not to harm him, but to temporarily blind him with its intensity. Then he turned and leapt through the boom tube just as it began to collapse. The journey back to Earth was a disorienting blur of dimensional energies and quantum fluctuations. Ben felt the Omnitrix finally give out, reverting him to human form mid-transit. For a terrifying moment, he thought he might be lost between universes, trapped in the interdimensional void. Then strong hands gripped his arms, pulling him forward. Superman, reaching back into the collapsing boom tube to ensure Ben made it through safely. With a final lurch, Ben emerged onto solid ground, falling to his knees on what appeared to be the floor of the Batcave. The boom tube snapped shut behind him with a thunderclap of displaced air, leaving absolute silence in its wake. Everyone accounted for. Batman's voice broke the quiet, as calm as if they'd just returned from a routine patrol. Superman helped Ben to his feet. All present. Good work, everyone. Ben looked around at the assembled heroes, the entire Justice League, battered and exhausted but alive. Gwen and Kevin stood nearby, relief evident on their faces. And Barda, looking both lost and determined in equal measure, surveying her new surroundings. "We did it," Ben said, somewhat disbelievingly. "We actually rescued the Justice League from Apokolips." With considerable help from the Justice League itself, Batman noted dryly. "But yes, the mission was successful. Darkseid's evolution project has been set back significantly. But not permanently," Superman cautioned. "He'll try again. The combination of our DNA and your Omnitrix technology is too tempting a prize." Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, which was currently in recharge mode after the extreme exertion. "At least we bought some time. And prevented him from creating an army of transforming parademons. Which brings us to our next challenge," Batman said, turning to one of the Batcave's massive computer screens. "Getting you three home." Gwen stepped forward. "I might be able to help with that. When we created the boom tube to get here, I sensed the dimensional frequency of our universe. With enough power, I could recreate that connection. The Watchtower's dimensional scanner is offline," Cyborg reported, interfacing with Batman's systems. "But we have the data from your previous visit, Ben. We could recalibrate it to lock onto your home universe again." "How long would that take?" Kevin asked. "Approximately 12 hours, Batman replied. "The Watchtower sustained significant damage during Darkseid's initial attack, but core systems remain functional." Ben nodded, relief washing through him. They had a way home. After everything, the battles, the narrow escapes, Apokolips itself, they could return to their own universe. "In the meantime," Superman said, "you should rest. All of you. The Batcave has medical facilities, and Alfred makes an excellent recovery meal." At the mention of food, Ben suddenly realized how hungry he was. Dimensional travel and fighting new gods apparently worked up quite an appetite. As the Justice League dispersed to tend to injuries and begin repairs to their systems, Ben found himself standing with Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, the Trinity at the core of the team. "Thank you," he said simply. "For everything." Wonder Woman smiled warmly. "It is we who should thank you, Ben Tennyson. You came when called, risking everything to help us." "The mark of a true hero," Superman added, placing a hand on Ben's shoulder. "You've more than earned our respect." Batman's expression remained typically stoic, but he gave Ben a small nod. "Your quick thinking on Apokolips saved lives. The pocket dimension tactic was inspired." Coming from Batman, this was high praise indeed. Ben couldn't help grinning despite his exhaustion. Just doing what heroes do, right? "Indeed," Wonder Woman agreed. "Now, rest. Tomorrow we send you home." 12 hours later, Ben, Gwen, and Kevin stood on the partially repaired Watchtower, facing a newly calibrated dimensional portal. The entire Justice League had gathered to see them off, along with Barda, who had decided to remain on Earth as an ally against Darkseid's inevitable return. The portal is stable, Cyborg reported. Locked onto your home universe's quantum frequency. It should place you back in Bellwood, approximately 1 minute after you left. 1 minute? Kevin raised an eyebrow. So no one will even know we were gone. Time flows differently between dimensions, Batman explained. What was days here might be moments there. Ben looked around at the assembled heroes, legends in his world, now friends and comrades in arms. I don't know what to say. This was, beyond anything I could have imagined. You faced Darkseid twice and lived to tell the tale, Flash pointed out with a grin. Not many can claim that. Keep the Omnitrix safe, Ben Tennyson, Superman advised. It's an incredible responsibility, but one you've proven worthy of bearing. And if you ever find yourself in our universe again, Wonder Woman added, know that you have friends here. Ben nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Same goes for you guys. If you ever end up in our world, well, I know some good smoothie places. Batman stepped forward, handing Ben a small device. A interdimensional emergency beacon. One-time use only. If Darkseid ever targets your universe directly, I'll call, Ben promised, carefully pocketing the device. Though let's hope it doesn't come to that. Final goodbyes were exchanged, handshakes, nods of respect, and in Flash's case, a high five that nearly knocked Ben over. Then it was time to leave. Ben, Gwen, and Kevin stood at the threshold of the portal, looking back one last time at the Justice League, Earth's mightiest heroes, standing together in unity despite their differences. Ready? Ben asked his friends. Gwen nodded. Let's go home. Before you change your mind and apply for Justice League membership, Kevin joked. Ben laughed, then turned to face the swirling portal. With one final wave to the assembled heroes, he stepped through, Gwen and Kevin right beside him. The familiar sensation of interdimensional travel washed over them, stretching, compressing, the laws of physics bending around their passage. Then, suddenly, they were back in the park in Bellwood, the afternoon sun shining exactly as they'd left it. Ben checked the Omnitrix, fully recharged now, with the Omega transformation still accessible in its database. A souvenir of his adventure, and perhaps their most powerful ally if Darkseid ever found his way to their universe. So, Kevin said as they walked out of the park, when we tell this story to everyone, I get to be the one who punched Darkseid, right? In your dreams, Ben scoffed. Besides, who's going to believe us anyway? Gwen linked arms with both of them. I don't care if anyone believes it. We know what happened. We faced a literal god on his home turf and won. Not bad for a day's work, Ben agreed with a smile. As they walked back toward town, Ben couldn't help glancing up at the sky. Somewhere out there, across the multiverse, the Justice League continued their never-ending battle for truth and justice. And if their paths ever crossed again, well, Ben Tennyson would be ready. He slapped the Omnitrix playfully. It's hero time. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.